Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship Season 2. And tonight marks round number 4 of the 12-round calendar, taking place at the British circuit of Silverstone, the Grand Prix circuit variant. We're looking at the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby tonight. That is lobby 2, and we're going to be bringing you all the racing action live throughout the proceedings this evening. And talking about our schedule for tonight is as follows: times in Greenwich Mean Time or GMT UTC. At what will be 8 o'clock, so in 15 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with the 15-minute qualifying session to determine who will be on pole for our opening race. Our opening race, of course, being the sprint race, the 15-minute sprint, which will take place at 8:15, and it'll be go, go, go from lights to finish, and it will be about being at the very front of the field and getting the maximum possible points for each and every driver. After that, we'll be bringing you your post-race interviews with our race winners with each of the classes. Of course, remembering that we have the Pro and the AM classes within Lobby 2 in the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing Lobby. And after those, we'll be taking a brief break before returning for the feature race at 5 to 9 tonight, with the feature race slated to be getting underway at 9 o'clock. And that will be the 60-minute strategic race with that all-important mandatory pit stop and how will our drivers fare when they have to go quadruple the distance compared to the sprint. In the commentary box, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, and tonight's broadcast is being brought to you on 3 different media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, you can tune in on YouTube using the official Next Gen Racing YouTube channel, or for those of you inclined to tune in via Facebook, you can also check out the official Next Gen Racing Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. And last but not least, if you're Twitch inclined, you can tune in on my personal Twitch channel, that is TX141 on Twitch, and you can watch the broadcast there. Now, with our drivers just making their way out onto the circuit for the final practice session before we get underway, it's only appropriate that we do now introduce our 2 primary sponsors for this lobby, without whom it would not be possible to bring you this lobby with regards to the organisation and also the prizes that are up for grabs for our drivers. So without further ado, let's introduce Coach Dave Academy. So who are Coach Dave Academy and what do they stand for? Well, Coach Dave Academy is the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track maps. Whether you're looking to gain just a tenth of a second, a whole second with regards to lap time, alternatively look for a more consistent way to drive the car, or just a way to set up the car that's better suited to your driving style, Coach Dave Academy is the place to go to. And whilst Coach Dave Academy initially focused on what was a set of course of competition on PC, one of the many sim racing titles available on PC, they have recently expanded their enterprise as of this year, as of 2021. They've recently expanded their enterprise into iRacing, the premier sim racing platform on the PC platform, as we are featuring tonight, of course, over the course of this series, all brought to you on the iRacing sim platform. But if you want to know more about potential setups, track maps and coaching, Coach Dave Academy is the place to go to, and plenty of valuable information there. But we are very grateful to Coach Dave Academy, who are helping out by providing us with a good number of our prizes for our prize pool, and indeed supporting us in getting things underway with regards to proceedings. And we then head over to Next Level Racing. Next Level Racing, founded in 2009, is the world's leading simulation brand, revolutionising simulation with its industry-leading product range, and with a clear focus on innovation and quality to meet the demanding needs of sim racers. Next Level Racing's designs and technology shall take your sim racing experience to the next level. And if you want to know more about their products, be sure to head to their official website, that's nextlevelracing.com today, for further information. That website again, nextlevelracing.com. And again, we're very grateful to have Next Level Racing on board with us, support us in running this series, and also with a number of prizes as well. And we did have them support us, of course, in season 1. It's fantastic to have Next Level Racing on board, and great to continue that partnership throughout season 2. Now, after talking about our primary sponsors, it's now to come on to our drivers, and in particular to talk about our standings. So we've had 3 rounds so far. We've completed a quarter of the season, and when we look at the pro class for what is the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing Lobby, or Lobby 2, it is the case that we do have a leader who is starting to make the breakaway after a great performance at Road Atlanta, and that is Paul Walton, who, having picked up the fastest lap in the sprint race and the feature race, plus also good results in both races, it is now the case that Paul Walton has a lead of just over 30 points, 31 points to be precise, over Gareth Williams. With Gareth Williams picking up good consistent performances in both races as well, but Paul Walton pipping him in terms of overall points gained. And Lamont Wedder there in P3 on 86 points, looking to chase down Gareth Williams, and it is the case that really our top 3 are making the breakaway from the rest of the field. With Dan Murray in P4 on 71 points, he's got Alistair Kirk, Michael Steele, Stefan Albanese, Paul Scott, Nigel Stock and Josh Wiggins chasing after him rather aggressively at the moment, and you can imagine it's anyone's guess who's going to be P4 come the end of tonight at Silverstone, with the fact it's so tight. Our P4 down to P10 in the championship being separated by the margin of only 9 points, with Josh Wiggins there at the bottom of our top 10. But the story really continues when you look outside the top 10, with Matthew Proughton not being in the top 10, not because of pointage, he's on 62 points, much like our P10 driver, but it is because of results countback. And Matthew Proughton, of course, would love to get some great results on the board today with the Pro driver to see himself up into the top 10 once again. But do not count out the likes of Koshi Kelly or Deagen Fairclough there, with both drivers on 56 points, although I am hearing a rumour after his highly dominant display at Road Atlanta, Deagen Fairclough picking up literally every point available to him within the Pro class in the end, that he has in fact potentially been promoted all the way up to the Pro, well, not just to the Pro class, but also being looked at being promoted into the Apex Racing Academy lobby as well. And as I'm currently checking my live timing sheets off screen right now, I can tell you that we're not seeing Deagen Fairclough currently racing in lobby 2 tonight, so it may be the case that promotion has already occurred, and if so, he'll be racing with the Apex Racing Academy lobby and the pros within the class there, and taking on an all new challenge. Stuart P. Taylor, meanwhile, in P14, joint on 54 points with Nathan J. Scott, but again, the two drivers only separated in placement with regards to results countback, and we can see there as we continue to look down, James Neve in P16 on 46 points, and looking to get some more points on the board today is Neve, with the fact he is starting to drop a little bit away from the top 15, but then again, when we say a little bit, it's only 8 points, and he could close it up at any time. Rick Jansen 1 point behind him, and then Paul Williams, Jamie Dory, and Daniel Merchant really forming the lowest portion of our Pro Championship right now, with 28 points being Paul Williams' point score so far, and Jamie Dory missing out on the races last time out of Road Atlanta, not being able to increase from his current 26 point total. Daniel Merchant, meanwhile, in P20 there with 24 points, and we can see as we look outside of our top 20, we have Ed May, who did take part in the sprint race at Road Atlanta, but wasn't able to get the car running for the purposes of the feature race, only 21 points, but effectively on his debut, and fantastic to see May get some great points. And Sam Holman, who I believe was not able to make it to Road Atlanta and will not be joining us again tonight at Silverstone, which is very unfortunate for the Pro driver, on 12 points, and Chris Perry completing our Pro standings on what is 10 points there in P23. Meanwhile, as we come over to the AM Championship by comparison, you can see the story here is a little bit different in terms of the close nature of the field, whereby our championship leader, Mark Baker, on 124 points, only leading by 10 points over fast-charging rookie Stefan Wessels. Now, Wessels started to find some consistency within that pace and that overall form, and we saw that at Road Atlanta with the fact that he was able to take pole position, the fastest lap in both of the races, and the win in the sprint race. And whilst he missed out on the win in the feature race, he picked up an incredible points haul, which has drawn him much closer to Mark Baker and seen Wessels really come alive. Now, can he continue that consistency and hunt down Mark Baker tonight? That will be the big question. As meanwhile, David A. Favo there in P3 on 90 points. Well, he's a bit behind our top two right now, with 24 points separated from Wessels, but you can see there Favo's got his own concerns to deal with, and none more so than Darren Doherty and Mark Sykes, who are chasing after Favo, and the difference between those three drivers, a 7-point range. But do not count out Gareth Mills, the GM Racing driver there in P6, who on 81 points is only a further 2 away, and then we've got a 9-point gap to Elwyn Sykes there in P7, and Elwyn Sykes putting in good performances, consistent midfield performances within the AM class. Will he be able to take it up a notch tonight? Mark Jardine, Liam Tack and Luke Hobson completed our top 10 there, and we can see the case from P8 to P10. Those drivers forming their own little battle for P8 and charging after the top 7, but it is the case there is a sizable gap, with Mark Jardine and Luke Hobson not being able to take part last time out at Road Atlanta, meaning they lost out on some vital points. Outside of our top 10, we can see Paul Colburn there in at P11 on 40 points, able to take part in the sprint race, but difficulties with the car, seeing him not finish the feature race. And Chris Keenan getting some very good points on the board there, up to 38 points now in P12. And we had a number of drivers who were not able to take to the field last time out of Road Atlanta, and that included the likes of Renus Hammerin and also Tom Delaney and Andy Walmsley, and those drivers missing out on a great opportunity for some major points. And instead, Jack Wyborn on his debut in the series, moving up to P14 on 36 points after 15 points in the sprint race and 21 in the feature. For that is our AM standings, and as we look to our team standings, which of course run across both of the lobbies, if you will, so these are the teams across the two lobbies and the points are brought together, it is the case that still still. Luxim24 with M&V Esports are leading by a margin of what is under 20 points, for 18 points, leading ahead of RD Simsport. Then you can see the delta between the two of them, and it is the case that our top four are starting to break away, with Ignium Spark and RTA completed our top four, RTA on 207 points. But that's not to count out Apex with M&V Esports, nor Switchback Motorsport, their P5, P6, both on 189 points, and it's only result countback that's separating the two from being dead equal, as CXR Project Black would also have something to say. And indeed, NXTGEN Orange, Altitude Esports and Delta Motorsport all looking to continue that pursuit for the top 5 of the Team Championship, or the Constructors Championship, if you will. Outside of our top 10, we can see that the McChallenge BE2 team just missing out on that top 10 currently, and the BE2 team really putting on strong performances compared to their peers with McChallenge BE1, but it has been the case that we are starting to see McChallenge BE1 getting a resurgence of form after the opening quarter of the championship. They're down in P18 for reference, but in between the two of them you do have NextGen Blue, RD Simsport 2, TGC Racing, Team Tetra Rouge, Ignium Motorsport and TRM Blue, and all those teams, again, you can see the delta between P11 and P20. It is at the end of the day only 38 points, and that's how close this team championship is, even for getting into the top 20, let alone getting into the top 10. And outside our top 20, we can see SVPMR there on 106 points, having a difficult day at Road Atlanta, and Ignium Motorsport Phoenix being able to close up to SVPMR very rapidly, and DDR running in the single driver of Rees Carroll in what is P23, able to get to 83 points and starting to get ahead of Team Racing Netherlands Orange, but we're imagining that the Dutch outfit will be coming back strong tonight. Now, as for the track that's playing host to tonight's races, it is the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit in Silverstone, Northamptonshire, England. A circuit consisting of 18 corners, as demonstrated in this image provided to us by simracingwiki.com. And of course, simracingwiki.com providing us with all of our circuit maps, and we're very grateful. A circuit known for one major thing. It is a high downforce circuit. It's a very high speed track, and it is a circuit which is all about trying to carry as much speed through the corners and being able to be confident on getting on the throttle pedal as soon as possible as you pass the apex as a driver. Indeed, we are going to see that now from our reference lap, as brought to you by Nigel Stock in the Ford GT3, and a lovely vehicle this as he makes his way out to turn 18 to go across that timeline to start another lap and go on to our reference lap, charging up through the gears here and coming into turn 1 in 5th gear, looking for his brake mark on the left hand side, a quick dab of the brakes, then downshift to 4th before stamping back on the throttle and throwing the car to the left hand side here and attacking his way through 2 before heavy braking down into turn 3, coming all the way down to 2nd gear and trail braking through the apex of 3 before getting back on the throttle briefly to settle the car under braking into turn number 4. Coming through from 1st gear, now it's all about hammering down the throttle as he makes his way flat out through the left-hander of 5, and as he heads onto the Wellington straight here, completely foot to the floor to the gas, and as he makes his way up to 5th gear, he's going to be heading up towards turn 6 very shortly, looking for his brake marker, looking for that 50-metre ball, braking a little bit before it and trail braking into turn number 6, aiming for the very late apex curve there as he now makes his way into 7. Trying to turn it into a V shape here, going a little bit wide of the central apex before turning the car in and getting back on the throttle, building up the throttle, and now it's all about the long run down the old straight, the old start finish straight here as he makes his way through turn number 8 and heads up towards turn 9. Now coming up for the gears once again into 5th gear. Again, it'll be a case of braking just before that 50-metre wood down to 4th gear, attacking that apex curve as tightly as possible before getting back on the throttle, having to be confident there and believing in the car and believing in that weight transfer as he now makes his way into the wonderful technical section of turns 10 through to 30 as he comes through 10 and 11 and now balancing the brakes and bringing the car down to 3rd gear into 12 and then through 13. Through Maggot's corner effect he comes as he now makes his way out on to the old hanger straight here, coming charging down the longest straight on this circuit, but also one of those corners coming up which is a very tricky one as he makes his way into turn number 15 here, and as he comes on through, you see coming down to 3rd gear, bringing the car all the way down to 3rd gear, and now get back on the throttle once he passes the apex, now coming up towards turn number 16, heavy braking commencing from that 100-metre board, coming down to 2nd gear, getting very patient on the throttle, and when he feels the car bite into turn 17, immediately back on the throttle here and flat out through the final corner, avoiding the sausage curve on the apex to complete the lap. A beautiful lap there by Nigel Stock. As for our rules tonight, our drivers will be running the iRacing medium downforce setup. They won't be running the high downforce fixed setup. It will be the fixed medium downforce setup to provide something a little bit different, because those of you with a canny eye and memory will remember that we did take to this circuit last time in Season 1 for one of our 2 Super Endurance 2-hour races, and that was with the high downforce setup, but we decided to throw in a little bit of variety. And in the sprint race or the feature race, both drivers will have one fast repair available, as is the norm, and you can see there that drivers will be subject to drive-through penalties if they exceed a certain number of instant points. It's 17 in the sprint race and it's 25 in the feature race. And of course, in the feature race, it is the case that our drivers will have that mandatory pit stop where our drivers will need to take on fuel. Changing tyres is optional, and that is because our drivers' starting fuel loads will be restricted to 70% for the start of the race. But with all our rules covered and all of our introductions done, we now look back to our live cameras and get ready to go qualifying, as we've only got half a minute to go this final practice session, and right now it is looking as though Paul Walton, as he makes his way out of the pits, the Lamborghini driver, well, in fact he's parked up there, you can't quite see him because of the wonderful wall, setting the fastest lap in what is the Pro class. Meanwhile, Stefan Vessel's once again setting the fastest practice lap in the AM class. The Ferrari driver really coming alive as he returns to the garage, and right now we are wondering, as unfortunately our blimp is a little bit obscured there by the paddock. We can look around, we see Matthew Proughton making his way across that timing line, but it does look as though Walton and Vessels both putting in very strong performances in the final practice session. But of course, practice is one thing, meanwhile, qualifying is something entirely different as we now get ready to go qualifying. So it's 15 minutes. Who's going to be on pole? We're about to find out. So as all of our drivers now make their way out of the pit lane here, it's going to be the case we see Paul Walton, the first of our drivers out, the RD Simsport driver here, literally coming out as quickly as possible. And indeed, we know Walton very eager to go racing. And behind him as well, we welcome the return of Joshua Wiggins, as we can see him here tucked in behind his teammate. The two RD Simsport drivers rolling together here as they make their way out of turn number 3 and heading up towards up towards 5 and then onto what is the Wellington Straight as they make their way on down here. Great friends and great teammates, and have worked very hard together throughout when they've both been on circuit together. Oh, goodness me, and we see in the back of your picture there, that's Mark Baker getting it very wrong very early on. We just saw him briefly right at the back of the picture, getting it wrong coming out of turn 5 and into the wall, and I believe the Ferrari driver has jumped back to the pits, and that is very unfortunate for Baker, who got it wrong so early on. And as our drivers continue to make their way around right now, we are just checking in with our stewards to hear whether there's been any further information conveyed, and it does not look as though there's any further faults. As a result, everything is green, all is go. As we can see, Arenas Hamron returning tonight, the Team at Racing Netherlands driver, making his way around right now in the BMW M4. Oh, goodness me, getting it very wrong there and turning into turn number 5. And you can see there, I believe that's Elwyn Sykes having to take a very last-ditch amount of evasive action. And indeed, a great job done by the South African there to avoid a collision. As we can see Mark Sykes behind there, tucking in and just following his fellow namesake as they make their way through turn number 6 and head into 7 here. And it is the case that right now, I think the Sykes duo here are both looking to perform strong tonight in the AM class. But of course, whilst they're not related, they're only related by name, not by blood. It is the case that we can see that Mark Sykes making his way through onto the old start finish straight right now and heading up towards turn number 9 and getting ready for his opening qualifying lap. But speaking of opening qualifying laps, we have Paul Walton coming on through. Let's jump on board as Walton takes us around for our opening flying lap of the session. So in the Lamborghini Huracan, charging down towards turn 1 here, getting on the brake about 60 metres from apex and just very confidently attacking the corners. We see a driver coming out of the pits and staying clear as he makes his way through 2 and up into 3, heading to the heavy braking zone here and balancing the brake pedal as much as he dares to do so as he now comes up into 4 into Village Corner, and as he makes his way through left-hander, goes a little bit deep there and as a result loses out on time as he now makes his way through the left-hander at turn number 5 and charges down the Wellington Straight here towards turn number 6. Now with this lap somewhat compromised, it's going to be the case that I do think that Walton may be looking to go faster than the next one, but regardless, he breaks down into turn 6 here, goes for a very late apex and really cuts off that late apex curve before coming into 7 and staying very tight here, not really deviating out from that natural curve line as he comes through 7, and as he exits he builds up the speed once again here, charging through the right hand kick of 8, completely flat out, and as he makes his way out towards 9, it's all going to be about confidence in knowing when to brake and when to chuck the car in as he goes into the right hand here, and as he makes his way in a very smooth line there, back on the throttle as soon as he reaches the apex, and now charging down towards Maggots he comes, he heads up towards turns 10 through to 13 into the left hander at 10 before switching to the right hander 11, but coming down a gear and then coming down a further gear here through turn number 12 as he settles the car down a little bit close to the apex there at 13, but he does get the car stop. He understeers a little bit there. This isn't the perfect lap from Walton, and you can see just a bit of hesitation in the nose of the car as he exited 13, came through 14, and now he makes his way up towards turn number 15 here at the end of the hanger straight. He charges up, looks his brake marker, heading in at the 75-metre point, and as he makes his way through the right-hander, a very pinpoint accurate curving there as he makes his way now down into turn number 16. Into the heavy braking zone he comes. It's not too far to go now in terms of the lap as he makes way through 16. Then the right-hander of 17 here, a smooth line and transitioning that body roll very well as he now makes his way through the final corner. What kind of lap is it going to be from Walton? It's not perfect, we know that, but it will be our opening lap of this session, and it's going to be a 2:01.3. What about the drivers behind as they come on through? And we can see it is Stefan Vettel's right now who's making his way around as well. I believe that's also Paul Williams just ahead as they come across to complete the laps. In fact, they're nowhere near completing their laps. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. A bit of a mistake on the camera angles there, but we can see we do have a number of laps coming in, and it's Nathan Scott who's put in a solid lap there as he makes his way down into turn number 3 once again. And as he comes on through, in the meantime, a bit further up, we can see it's Matthew Prouting in P2 as Seal then goes P2. All the laps are now coming in as the Ignium Motorsport driver is able to place himself 3 tenths off that provisional pole as set by Gareth Williams. Oh, goodness me, and Seal getting it wrong there coming into turn number 2, losing the rear end of the Porsche 911. Unfortunately for him, he's been able to put it off circuit before anybody's been coming on through, but he's going to be worried. There's a lot of drivers now coming through on laps. As we look a bit further down the order, it's the case that Davide Favo here not able to put the provisional pole lap in. That's gone to Mark Baker within the AM class, but plenty of AMs still to put in laps with the 10 minutes this qualifying session remaining. We've still got a lot of time. It's nowhere near done as of yet as our drivers continue their way round, and as they do so right now, we can see it's one of those situations where we haven't quite got our track map up on display. So let's get that track map on display for you, ladies and gentlemen, and there you go. You've got your circuit map once again in the top right corner of your screen. We have made some slight updates and tweaks to the broadcasting graphics, so if you're noticing things are a little bit different, that explains why, but otherwise it should be mostly the same as before. As we can see Father making his way right now through turn number 7 here and keeping it nice and smooth. But right now, Mark Baker, the fastest of our AM drivers after that mistake on his opening warm-up lap in the qualifying session, coming out to turn 5 where he's got his head down and got on with it. The cold tyres not keeping him at bay in the end as he now makes his way around on another lap. And whilst we're talking about AMs, we should introduce a newcomer to the series tonight, and that is Travis Linscomb Hatfield here as he makes his way through the sequence of corners, and in a rather colourful livery Lamborghini Huracan there. And I really do like that livery with a variety of colours on it there. Indeed, the rainbow unicorn by looks of things, also the American flag on the top. Very brash, very loud and proud. And there's nothing wrong with that as he makes his way down towards what is turn number 15 as he comes into the right-hander here. It is the case that the American, I didn't have the chance to catch up with him going into tonight's proceedings. I did see a new face down in the paddock, but I wasn't able to get the opportunity to say hello or ask him how he's feeling going into tonight. But you can imagine it is the case that Linscomb Hatfield will be trying to leave an impression come the end of tonight as he makes his debut in the series. With just over half this session to go, we follow him through to the end of his current lap, and I believe that's going to put him, as he crosses the line, that puts him at provisional P2 in class there, and a good lap by Hatfield as we can see that we are now starting to get that segregation between the pros and the AM drivers. And quite interestingly, it is the case that right now our top 13 are all pros, and then after that it's all AMs, as we see Mark Sykes putting in a lap, the Englishman doing a good job there to go provisional P3, albeit he is right now 1.5 tenths off of Linscomb Hatfield, and the Linscomb Hatfield is a further 4 tenths off of Mark Baker. As we see Paul Scott putting his opening lap there, the pro driver not on the best of laps, and the BMW M4 driver will now be looking to try and improve as he's got half the qualifying session remaining. But looking from our AMs and further around our pros, we can see we've got Kosh Kelly meanwhile making his way on through, halfway through the lap right now, currently P10, and the Lamborghini Huracan driver not feeling it right now, I would presume. But then again, you look at the delta between our pro drivers and it is very close, and really the main gap is from what is P2 to P3, with Seal being 2 tenths off of Prouting. And then you look at the deltas between Seal and Walton, Wiggins, Scott, Albanese. It is the case that if at most it's a tenth, at minimum it is only a couple of hundredths, if that. And that shows you how closely matched our pro drivers are and how they've got to try and extract every little bit they can out of the car here at Silverstone. As we can see Kelly making his way down the hanger straight right now and heading up towards turn number 15. Now you may be thinking, hangers, Wellington, doesn't that sound like something out of a World War II movie, or alternatively World War II history? But well, it is the case that Silverstone, the British circuit, was made on the site of what was effectively an airfield, and we had two runways, if you will, intersecting one another. So that's why we do have a number of cores which do refer to British aviation in the Second World War, particularly the Wellington Strait being named after the Wellington medium bomber. That is the case that we see Kelly here coming to the end of a lap right now, and will he be able to drop a bomb in terms of his lap? No, he will not be able to, and instead stays P11 in class for the time being as he makes his way on through onto another flying lap. And we check in with you guys and girls in the chat, and how are you all doing is the big question, and who are you cheering on tonight? Do not be shy, feel free to say hi, we don't bite. It is the case, we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts and who you are cheering on, who you're expected potentially to do very well here tonight, and who you perhaps think it might be a bit too much for. And right now, waiting to put in a lap is the Belgian of Chris Keenan here as he makes his way on to another lap, the BMW M4 driver, and let's ride on board and see how he gets on. As he makes his way through turn number 2 and up into 3, a little bit wide there of the apex of 2, and we were hearing from a number of BMW drivers down the paddock that they were expecting the M4 to struggle here compared to its peers in the GT3 class tonight. So we're expecting the BMWs not to be there, but I say that, and then we can see that it's Williams and Prouting right up the top of our timing sheets right now overall. So it may be the case that it's just one of those situations where some drivers are not too comfortable in the M4 around here. And we have had recently an update to iRacing which has seen some very minor tweaks to GT3 cars. From what I'm hearing, a little bit more downforce has been applied to the Mercedes. We haven't got any Mercedes here tonight so far, and also it's the case of the suspension of the McLaren MP4 12C has been slightly modified, but again we haven't got any McLarens here. But as we see, it's the case that Chris Keenan going a bit wide there, just too early on the throttle coming through turn number 7, and it's causing him to drift wide, and I believe that will be an aborted lap as he pulls out the way with another driver coming through. And as it's the case that Keenan gives way to Prouting, we follow Prouting here as he makes his way around, as Alistair Kirk is making his way to the end of a lap from what we're hearing. Nigel Stock is in the pit lane. Meanwhile, we've still got a lot of drivers trying to put in times, and a good number of drivers who've yet to set a time. In fact, it's the best part of 7 drivers who've yet to set a time, Chris Keenan being one of them, Alistair Kirk being another one, and as soon as I say that, Alistair Kirk goes P13 in class, and overall there with a 201.364. So 6 drivers still to set a lap as they all continue around, and we've only got 4 minutes of this session to go. And remember, they will be able to finish their lap once that timer concludes if they are on a hot lap, but right now the pressure will be building, and most of our drivers will only have 2 more flying laps. And right now you'd have to imagine that whilst more rubber is going down the circuit, and also the track temperature will increase now that we've had our cars going around for a significant period of time, will our drivers be able to find the ample space they need to be able to put in laps over the course of what is the remaining time? Well, there is plenty of space down the circuit as we've got a car into the wall there, and I believe that was Stefan Vessel's into the wall coming out the final corner as Prouting completes his lap and goes on to another. Prouting not improving that time, but meanwhile what I can tell you that as everybody is still trying to squeeze in laps right now, as we see behind, that's Elwyn Sykes coming out the pits, unless I'm very much mistaken. Indeed I am. That's Stefan Vessel's coming up pits. Here's Elwyn Sykes making his way right now down the old start-finish straight and into turn, oh sorry, not the old start-finish straight, I'm getting everything mixed up here, coming through turn number 1 and into 2. Goodness me. And as Elwyn Sykes comes down into 3 right now, currently P6 in class, and trying to find a way to get a little bit further up the class sheets as he makes his way through turn number 4 through Village Corner. And as he comes on through here, it's looking very smooth so far for the Ferrari driver with those 3 minutes remaining as he comes on through, but he goes a bit wide there of 5, not deciding to cut as much apex curve as he can, and our drivers can be quite liberal with that apex curve of 5, but I believe there is a small bump or depression in the curve which may unsettle some of the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars in particular. So looking at the likes of the Ferrari 488 for example, or the Porsche 911 RSR, those cars will be unsettled by those depressions in the road because of the weight being in the rear of the car, and therefore there's less overall natural stability in the car when the suspension takes a hit. But meanwhile, as we continue to watch Sykes making his way through turn at number 8 here, and heading onto the old start-finish straight, finally getting our bearings correct. Now coming up into turn number 9, looking very smooth right now for the Ferrari driver as he gets it quite close to the apex there in 9, not quite able to get it onto the apex curve, but we do know again there are the sleeping policemen or the small sausage curbs on that curve which can unsettle the car. And I think while Sykes may not have the fastest lap here, it's looking very smooth so far as he comes through towards turn number 13 and then completes the run out of Maggots, and into the run down the hanger straight he comes as Paul Walton goes P2 overall. overall. Only 4 thousandths off of Gareth Williams, but nobody right now is able to dethrone Gareth Williams. And that, well, we saw that happen at Daytona between Walton, Williams and Wiggins, how close they were in qualifying. Will we see it happen at the very last tour in qualifying? As we continue to watch Sykes, who goes a bit wide coming out to turn number 15, but he is going to come to the end of this lap right now. And in terms of his timings, we're waiting to see the confirmation. He is up in 3 of his sectors so far, and he is putting in a good points. In fact, 2 of his sectors so far. And as he makes his way to the end of this lap, will it be an improvement, or will it be the case he stays as is? He crosses that timing line, and he does improve to P5. We're 202.3, improving by almost a second on his previous time, and that has moved him quite sizably up there. And he's now, well, he's only 1 thousandths ahead of Renus Hamron there, and Hamron in the pits right now, not reacting. He's not going to have time to get out and put in a lap, so Hamron deciding to park it. And speaking to somebody else who's decided to park it, Mark Baker has called quits on his qualifying session. The Ferrari driver thinks he's done enough, but meanwhile, in the battle for pole position overall and in the pro class, we can see that Gareth Williams out on a lap right now, as Josh Wiggins has just tried to set another lap and has not improved. And it is the case that, well, looking at the delta from P1 all the way down to P10, our drivers are separated by no more than half a second. As we continue to watch here, Williams making his way around. Will our current pole sitter be able to extend that provisional pole position advantage, or will Walton have something to say about it? As we're hearing that Ed May is around on circuit right now and going on to a lap is Ed May. And as our drivers make their way on through right now, do we have any drivers who've yet to set time? Well, Ed May, Daniel Merchant, Stefan Vessels and also Rick Jansen have yet to put in times. And I'm a little bit questionable about Stefan Vessels, because I swear I did see him put in the time earlier, but we'll get some clarification about that when we can. But it's right now Gareth Williams continuing to push on through here. He's not got much of a lap left, but now he's got one of the trickiest corners on the lap. Solo corners here, as you can see behind. I believe that is Paul Scott tucked in behind him and trying to get a bit of a distant tow is Paul Scott, as they make their way down the hanger straight into turn number 15 they come. And as they make their way on through here, where it's absolutely smooth for Williams in the M4. Though a small bit of oversteer there just on the exit, the car just not going to settle down immediately. That won't cost him too much time as he makes his way through the left-hander. As 16 goes a little bit wide at the apex curve there, comes through 17 nice and smooth, as Matthew Prouting just takes provisional pole with a 158.9, and Williams, I think, having to come off the lap here. And where on earth has that come from for Prouting? A 58.9 is phenomenal, and Stefan Vessels has just taken pole position in the AM class provisionally as he leaves the pit lane there with an absolute belter of a lap, which was, whilst we haven't got the time complete on screen, it was a 2:06. Goodness me. And now we're just waiting for our drivers to finish who are out there. But in terms of the pros, all the pros are done as Alistair Kirk comes to the end of his lap, and Laurent Wedder is also parking up. I believe the only, well, in fact no, Alistair Kirk is still out on the lap, I should clarify. And as we see the TGC racer here make his way down towards what is Maggot's corner, it's the case that Prouting, well, I'm sure he has taken pole position at this rate, unless we see either a case that it's going to be Ed May or Daniel Merchant suddenly set a lap out of nowhere, as Ed May is coming to the end of his current lap, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near close enough. As meanwhile we can see Kirk not in an improving lap right now, and in fact not on the best lap at all, as he makes his way up towards turn number 16, through 15 into 16 I should say. And this being compared to his previous lap, as you can see, he's only up in the opening sector, and in sectors 2 to 4 he is down in his previous best. As meanwhile Daniel Merchant here is making his way through the final corner, a little bit of a latency issue there for the Briton as he comes, the Frenchman, as he comes across the line, and he goes P14 in class. And what about Alistair Kirk here? He crosses the line. Kirk does not improve. And have we got anybody else out on circuit? Well, we do have Ed May coming on through right now, but I think that's at the end of a lap. So in the end, pole position overall goes to Matthew Prouting in both the overall and the pro class, and Stefan Vessels takes pole position in the AM class. And Stefan Vessels in the end taking pole in his class by a margin of 1.1 seconds compared to Mark Baker. My goodness, well, Vessels has put down the gauntlet once again in qualifying, but the question will be, can he nail it come the sprint race? Can he get that smooth start and make a breakaway? Because he's right up there and completely separated from his peers in the AM class, and that is going to be a sight to see as our drivers get ready to go racing. As we now get ready at any moment now, we should be transitioning over and we check with you guys and girls in the chat there, as we can see Joe Fernando Vlogs there in the YouTube chat saying cheering on Matt Prouting in the Beamer, and Vintage Toy Rush asking, will you be live streaming the other lobby in the future? I will be indeed, Vintage Toy Rush. Come back tomorrow night and I'll be bringing you the Apex Racing Academy lobby. As meanwhile we see that Ed May just making his way on around. I think Ed May has now come to the end of his qualifying session as well. So without further ado, we now get ready for the build up to the sprint race, and let's take a look at the grid. So taking pole position in the end by a margin of what was just over 1 second, in fact almost close to 2 seconds, it was Matthew Prouting taking pole over Gareth Williams in the end, locking out the front row of the two drivers. Paul Walton qualifying P3, and meanwhile Stefan Vessel's qualifying P4. Stefan Vessel's are overall a qualifying pole position for the AM class by an absolutely huge margin over his peers of 1.1 seconds. The third row going to Nigel Stock and Dan Murray, then Michael Sill and Josh Wiggins on what is the fourth row. Following them, it is the case Nathan Scott and Kosh Kelly on row number 5, Stefan Albanese and Lamont Wedder on row number 6. We look further down and it is the case on row number 7, Paul Williams and Alistair Kirk, Daniel Merchant and James Neve completing row number 8, and then Mark Baker, our second placed AM driver, coming P17 in qualifying, and he lines up alongside Paul Scott, the pro driver there, Paul Scott down in P18. Travis Linscombe Hatfield there, qualifying P3 in the AM class, that's P19 overall, and joined on his row by Tom Delaney. Mark Sykes and Elwyn Sykes, the two Sykes gentlemen, line up together on what is row number 11, and then Renus van Hameren and Gareth Mills completing row number 12. And as we look to our final rows, it's Liam Tack and Davide Favo on row number 13, Chris Keenan and Ed May on row number 14, and Rick Jansen completing the rear of our order in P29. Struggling in qualifying did both Ed May and Rick Jansen, as we now get ready to go racing here at Silverstone for what is the sprint race. So as we move the grid out of the way, we now see all of our drivers just parking up and getting ready to go, as we see the, whoa, goodness me, we're trying to find the blimp, and the blimp's not available right now. I think the blimp is currently down. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. We are having some slight issues there. I think it's actually Matthew Prouting may have just had a disconnect, which if so, that is a disaster for Matthew Prouting, because that would mean that Gareth Williams then takes the pole position off him. We're just waiting for any moment now, and that is the gridding process complete, and Matthew Prouting, I believe, is in the pit lane. It is the case that Prouting has jumped to the pits with some technical issues on the BMW, drama right at the start for Prouting, and it means that Gareth Williams is now going to take the field away from what is effectively pole position as they make their way around through turn number 16, or sorry, turn number 15, and head down towards 16. We'll get it right one day as he makes his way on down. As all of our drivers come down towards turn number 16 here and through the final sequence of corners, we wait for Gareth Williams to take us away to the green. And it's lights out and away we go for the sprint race here at Silverstone. As you can see immediately Walton going on the attack versus Williams into turn number 1. And as they make their way through, but oh goodness me, and we've already had an incident involving Stefan Vessels and what is Nigel Stock there. The two drivers coming to blows, but as we look from them back up to the battles up front, we can see we've got the TGC Hurricanes there going very wrong. Meanwhile Dan Murray battling with Michael Sill and Josh Wiggins as Sill tries to go round the outside of both Murray and Wiggins holding firm on the inside there. And as they come up through turn number 5 and head down the Wellington Straight here for the first time of asking, it's already been quite a furtive and battlefield opening lap as they make their way down towards turn number 6, and Kosh Kelly gaining places as meanwhile Josh Wiggins here going for the move on the inside of Murray as they come through turn number 6, but you can see Murray there keeping his nose in as they go into 7, and Murray holds firm on the inside line as they make their way on through. As a bit further back, I believe Stefan Albanese has had an off and has dropped down to P14. There's been a lot of incidents, and we can see there just ahead James Neve gaining places here as they make their way on through the corners, but we look back up to the battle between Murray and Wiggins here, and we can see that Wiggins are looking for the move once again as they come up into 9. The two Porsche drivers going toe to toe already, and they haven't even gone through half a lap as they now get to the halfway point of the lap, and you can see that Murray dropping back behind Wiggins now, and Wiggins trying to get a move on as soon as possible here. He does not want to be stuck behind Murray, and as they all come on through in towards Maggots here, it's the case as they come through turn number 13 and heading to 14. Murray just having to wait for an opportunity as we've got the Porsche army of what is Wiggins through to Seal running from P3 to P6, and then we've got the BMW behind us. Meanwhile, you can see Walton here closing on our leader, and Williams with what was a good start, and Walton right behind him. But as they make their way into turn number 15, we can see Wiggins here defending versus Maury having to come to that inside line as they come through the corner, and Maury trying to come on through as well, and Maury's all over the back. He's going to look for the outside to inside here through 16 into 17, and as they come through, oh goodness me, and what's happened here? We've had an instant between the race leaders. Well, Walton carries on, my goodness, and after one lap there's been collision after collision here as they come around to go on to lap number 2. It's Walton leading ahead of Josh Wiggins, and then Dan Maury in P3, followed by Gareth Williams in P4, Nathan J. Scott in P5, as we see Williams there looking for the move on the inside of Maury. He couldn't find it and had to back out, and as they make their way through 2 and up into 3 right now, you can see Gareth Williams all out of position as we've got a BMW going wayward there, and that's Wedder who got it wrong under braking, I think, trying to avoid a car in front of him. And as they make their way into the corners, you can see it's still trying to come through Scott in the run for P5, and as they make their way on the exit of turn number 4 coming up into 5 right now, it is the case that behind these guys we've got Paul Williams with a great start, gaining 6 places up to P7. Mark Baker, our leader in the AM class, in P8 overall. Lambert Wedder in P9, Paul Scott in P10, but right now Scott trying to look for the move on Wedder, who had the run off there at what was turn number 2 only moments ago. Scott on the inside here versus Wedder, but Wedder's going to be on the inside into turn number 7, and as they come into the braking zone, it is the case they fly through the corner, and Scott has to wait for the outside line now, but he will have to be careful because he will have Kosh Kelly on his inside. You can see Kelly not being able to get the exit as much as the 2 BMW drivers, and they stay as they were for the time being. As meanwhile, further down, I can tell you that it's the case that Linscombe Hatfield is now up to P14 overall, P2 in class on his debut. The American driver putting in a strong performance as he makes his way down. Further back there, you can see Ed May holding ahead of Matthew Broughton, who goes around the outside of Alistair Kirk here. The 2 pro drivers going to blows as they come through 9 up into 10. Broughton having started at the back of the field due to issues with the car and having to start from the pit lane. Well, he's battling right now with Kirk, but he's got ahead in the run into Maggots, and that is going to work out for him very nicely as they now make their way down onto what is that hangar straight. Now as they come on through, it is the case that Kirk is not going to be close enough. We don't think, well, I say he's not going to be close enough, he's all over the back of Broughton here, as meanwhile up front I can tell you the 2 RD Simsport drivers have changed places, but meanwhile Broughton versus Kirk, we look back to, oh goodness me, and we've got, I think that's Kosh Kelly who's off circuit there at turn number 15, and as we see it's all, and there's more carnage here. As I believe we have got, that is the Porsche with Delaney going for a spin. A lot of drivers being involved in instances of either their own doing or with other drivers, as right now this race is definitely up in the gear in terms of the paces. Our leaders are now into the 201s, and we can see Prouting here backing off, and now I'm wondering if Prouting got a slowdown or an issue with the car, because he's just completely backed off and let drivers on through, and I wonder what's happening there. As meanwhile we can see further up the road we've got Lambert Wedder battling with what is the RD Simsport driver Paul Walton, and Wedder sweeping in with Paul Walton on his inside there, and both drivers in a major collision between the 2 of them. But whilst they're having collisions and there's accidents up and down the field, I can tell you that peacefully right now James Leaf trying to cut his way further up the order. He's in P10 right now trying to go after Stefan Albanese, but remembering that Stefan Albanese awarded driver of the day within the Pro class last time out of Road Atlanta for his defensive driving. Well, Neva's probably got the hardest driver to overtake ahead of him right now, because Albanese will find a way to make that BMW not just 1 car wide, but about 6 cars wide, and fill up the entirety of the circuit as they make their way on through. But behind me, while the American Linscombe Hatfield just has to watch for the time being, he won't be feeling any pressure per se, for the simple reason that his closest competitor in the AM class is Elwyn Sykes, who's behind him, and if he wants to chase after Baker, he's got to gain a good 4 places before he can contest the leader in the AM class right now. As we see all of our drivers here making their way through turn number 9 once again. 5 minutes of this race gone, and right now it's anyone's guess how this one is going to go, given the number of instance we have had. But we look from our what is our P11 position here to a bit further back, and you can see further back in the picture Elwyn Sykes has got Gareth Mills closing up behind him here, and behind the pair of them you've got Matthew Prouting all over the back as we sit on board here with Gareth Mills. He takes us through and onto what is the hangar straight. Now as he exits from the corner here, it's going to be one of those situations where he's going to have the overspeed versus the Ferrari of Sykes ahead. What are the slipstream? But I do think Prouting's trying to find his way on through, and in fact, is that Prouting coming through? There's Prouting on the right hand side of your camera as he makes his way on through here, and Mills not fighting with the pro driver coming on through, but that in return is Stefan Vessels, who's just snuck his way up the inside there, and Mills lifting off of the pro has cost himself the place to the AM driver as they make their way up into turn number 16, and Mills with a crumpled front on that Porsche as well. as they make their way through the corners, and as they move further back there, we can see it's the case that the Dutch contingent all tripping over one another by the looks of things, as Rick Jansen, oh goodness me, we've got a car completely sideways there, and that's Lambert Wedder and Paul Walton, the two drivers coming to blows again. What on earth has happened between these two this time? This was only moments ago, and Walton just hitting the sausage curb there and essentially jumping into the side of Wedder, and I think he's turning way too early for that one, and that's a mistake he's going to be ruined as we look back to live pictures. And well, it's the case those sausage curbs will launch these cars as they've got quite low ride heights, but meanwhile it's the case Wedder has to resume racing, and we've got a couple of drivers right now who are in the pits. I think Kelly and Merchant both in the pits and doing work on the cars. But meanwhile, looking back to our race leaders, we come to the end of the first half of the race here. We're still 7.5 minutes to go, and it's Maury leading right now ahead of Williams. And as they make their way through turn number 9, for what for them is the fourth time of asking right now, you'd have to imagine the Altitude Esports driver of Maury doing everything in his capacity in order to hold on to that lead. As a little bit further back, you can see it's the case that Michael's still trying to encroach on these guys as they make their way through in towards Maggots. And as they come through turn number 13 and head on to 14 right now, we're hearing that Linscombe Hatfield is dropping down the order. He's letting some of the pros on through, but that's not going to faze him too much. As you can see here, it's the case that Williams really struggling coming out to turn at number 14 and onto the hangar straight here, and a bit further back we can see that it's James Neve right in the hunt here for what is P8 versus Stefan Albanese. That's P7 in class that Albanese's in right now as they make their way up towards turn number 15, but there's no way through at the moment for the privateer as he makes his way through the corner, and all of them run nose to tail, line astern as they were before, but you can imagine they'll all be trying to size up potential moves on one another as they make their way on through turn at number 16. But we have had a number of moments in this race, moments which I don't think we're going to forget, and let's talk a little bit about some of the incidents that happened earlier, and one of which, let's take a look at what happened to Josh Wiggins. So this was Josh Wiggins earlier on, and he was leading versus Maury. Now, what happened to the RD Simsport driver? This was into turn number 15, and under braking, there was contact with Maury there, and Wiggins, it looked as though he locked up the front end into the corner, and the contact between him and Maury resulted from that lockup, plus also the two drivers trying to contest the corner, and Wiggins coming off the worst of the two there. At least that's what it looks like to us, but of course, it's going to be a very different story, and the stewards will be looking at that telemetry data after the race most likely, as whilst it's not live stewarded, our stewards will going hard on any incidents where they feel it's appropriate. As meanwhile, we look back to live pictures right now, and that's how Wiggins lost out on the lead there. But meanwhile, a little bit further on in terms of earlier on in the race, I should really say, in terms of major moments involving drivers, we are trying to look back at what happened earlier on between Walton and Wedder. We will find out very shortly for you folks, and in fact not between Walton and Wedder, between Walton and what was Gareth Williams. Let's take a look back at the incident between our two drivers who at one point were battling for the lead. So this was in the battle for lead much earlier on. You can see Williams leading ahead of Walton. Now they were coming down into turn number 16 here, and Walton on the brakes taps the rear of Williams, and that's what kicked this off. And then of course with Williams trying to get the car settled, it was the case that all the drivers stacked up on top of this, and I think Walton, whilst he wanted to wait, just couldn't because he would have been obstructing the race. As a result, he's had to carry on racing. But of course Walton now, with that incident later on with Wedder ending up dropping down the field, and it's Williams now hunting down more. But definitely a very difficult race for multiple drivers with only 5 minutes remaining right now, and we can see Williams, as we look back to the live pictures, trying to go on the offensive here. As we do apologise that our circuit map is missing at the moment, we will get that back for you very shortly, and here it is once again, ladies and gentlemen, circuit map on display as they make their way on through turn number 18 and on to another lap. And as our drivers make their way down right now, the battle for the lead continues to intensify here, with Williams trying to take on Maury as they come through the opening corner here, but there's no way through for the time being. You can see the Porsche able to take these high-speed apexes more comfortably, but it's when we get onto the straights and major acceleration zones where the top end speed of that BMW M4 really shines on through as our drivers make their way through the corners. Meanwhile, a bit further behind, and really a huge understated performance right now, Paul Williams, whilst he's normally been in the midfield of the Pro class, right now running in P4 in this sprint race, and I think he'll be very happy with this performance, the Team Tetra Rouge driver, and he will see his teammate behind him, Mark Baker, who's still leading the AM class here in this sprint race, a considerable margin ahead of his peers, with his second place opponent being Linscombe Hatfield, who was all the way down in P13. But Team Tetrarooge really coming to terms with the Silverstone circuit in the sprint race and putting in solid performances in both classes. But as we talk about their praises, we look a little bit further down, we can see Alistair Kirk here trying to close up to the back of Ed May as they make their way out of 7 and come charging on through down towards turn number 9. Now, what can the TGC Racing driver do from this position? That will be the big question. Well, I think in his mind, what he's got to try and do at this point is just get a little bit closer in the run to turn 13, so that way he can go on the offensive when they come onto the hangar straight. Will he be able to do so? However, given the dirty air coming off the BMW ahead of him, it's going to be a challenge, but he's got the rotation in that Lamborghini Huracan. Can he exploit it as he comes through the corners? It's looking very smooth right now, but in terms of closing the gap, we have to remember as well, May does have the slipstream of Albanese ahead, but you can see Kirk getting the better exit there, and that's going to be one of the best exits he will get. But unfortunately, the BMW ahead of him has got its straight line speed, and it's also got the toe of another BMW in front, and that's the problem here. When you haven't got the ability to close down a driver because they've got the toe ahead, you have to stay and just keep trying to extract the performance out the car and close up as rapidly as possible. But meanwhile, our race leaders, as they come through turns 16 and 17 and make their way through the final corner, 2 more laps to go for these guys as they make their way on round onto another lap. It is the case that right now Maury opening up that gap slightly. He's opening it up to 6 tenths of a second, whereas going on to the previous lap it was only 2 tenths of a second. I think Maury's starting to capitalise here, but don't count Williams out right now. He may have backed the car off in order to cool the tyres and the brakes down and go for one push on the final lap. But meanwhile, we can see here we've got Paul Scott bunching up behind Mark Baker, and behind Scott is another Scott in the form of Nathan J. Scott as they come up into turn number 4 into Village Corner here. Now, what will the 2 pro drivers do, and what will Baker do as well? Given Baker doesn't have to fight these guys, but you can see the pack of pros behind the AM driver here, and he's running at their pace. It's not as though he doesn't deserve to be there right now. He is matching them for pace very nice in the Ferrari, but you can see how they're all closed up, and we can see that Paul Scott looking for the move on the inside here, and Baker's going to open the steering wheel to let the pro driver through. I think Nathan Scott at this point will be thinking, okay, well, Mark, if you've let one Scott through, can you let the other Scott through? And Mark in the end not able to really place his car out the way there as Nathan Scott is going to feel the pinch, but in the end he does get the better run out to turn number 7 coming into 8, and Baker staying wide here to give the Porsche driver the space on the inside. Further behind, meanwhile, you can see that Albanese continuing to hold off Kirk behind him as Alistair Kirk tries to gain on Stefan Albanese, but the Italian staying very firm. The Italian stallion knowing where to place that BMW as they make their way out to 9 and up towards 10. As they make their way charging on through, we can see it's the case that Mark Baker just lifting off for all the pros going through, although you can see May there having to run a little bit wide there. I think Baker saying, okay, well, I've tried to give everybody as much room as possible. I can't give you all that room, but in the end they all make it through, and now this will be the case that Mark Baker will go on to the end, I think, with Neve 1 second behind him, and he won't be too concerned about the rate at which Neve closes up to the back of him. But meanwhile, we look a little bit further up in the battle for what is effectively P6 right now, or P5 if you include Paul Scott in that, although he has opened up a little bit of a gap, and as they all make their way down towards turn number 16 to head on to the final lap soon. You can see Alistair Kirk looking for the move, and Albanese going in very deep there into turn 16, and Albanese, oh goodness me, and it's the case they make contact, another motor contact, and Mark Baker's involved in the collisions, and as it's not Mark Baker with damage to the car, surely not. He's got to limp that car around for one more lap, but how much damage has he got on that front suspension? And we can see Linscombe Hatfield here is closing rapidly as they go on to the final lap. It's penultimate lap drama, and now Hatfield's trying to find his way past Prouting here to go hunting, and if this is going to be the case, that's going to be a huge upset for Team Tetrarooge as we see Prouting here and to try and hold off Linscombe Hatfield, but Hatfield's going to go round the outside and into the inside here into turn number 4. He can sense that the win in the AM race is available to him. He's just got to go hunt it down, and he needs to get a move on as well, because Stefan Wessels, after a disastrous opening lap, the contact with Nigel Stock into turn number 1, well, Wessels has recovered this somewhat, and he is chasing down Linscombe Hatfield right now as they make their way into the corner. You can see Prouting looking for the move there as he gets closed in by Hatfield, who pulls into turn number 6 as best as he can, but as they make their way on through the corner right now, we look from the battle for effectively what is a shot at P2, if not the win in the AM class, to Gareth Williams up front, who has passed Maury. We haven't spoken about that, but he has found his way past Maury and is now trying to hold on versus the Porsche driver behind as they make their way through the final half of the final lap here in the sprint race at Silverstone. And as they come through turn number 13, Williams holding that position right now as we ride on board the gearbox here of the BMW M4 driver, and you can see Maury, whilst he got a good run out of the sequence of corners, he's not close enough, and he hasn't got enough straight line speed even with the toe here. So I think Williams is going to be safe as long as he hooks up the final 4 corners. But these corners do favour the Porsche as they make their way through 15. There's no change so far, but as they make their way down the hill now in towards 16, they come into the heavy braking zone. Will Maury find a way on through? He's running out of time of day, and as they come through the last 2 corners here, it's only one more corner to go. It's a flat out corner. It's going to be Gareth Williams who comes around to take the win in the sprint race in the end by only 2/10 of a second ahead of Dan Maury, and they finish on the podium for the Pro Class with Michael Seal completing the podium for the Pro Class in P3, Paul Williams with P4, followed by Paul Scott P5, and then Alistair Kirk P6, Ed May P7, Stefan Albanese P8, Josh Wiggins P9, James Neve at P10, and Mark Baker P11 overall takes the AM Class win in the sprint race despite the damage picked up on the penultimate lap. Travis Linscombe Hatfield comes home in P2 in the AM Class, P12 overall on his debut, a brilliant drive from the American. Matthew Prouting comes home P13, Stefan Vessels P14, P3 in class, completing our AM Class podium. We can see Nathan J. Scott P15, and it's Gareth Mills at P16, followed by Davide Favo in P17, as all our drivers have come to the end of the race. Tom Delaney P18, Elwyn Sykes P19, and completing our top 20, Nigel Stock there with a difficult start to race. And the Ford GT driver, I can imagine, maybe fuming a little bit after what was expected to be a good start to his race. Well, don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back within the next 3 to 4 minutes with our post-race interviews, and you will not want to miss them, that I can assure you. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, we are back for our post-race interviews with our winners of the sprint race, and we're going to be kicking off with our winner in the AM class, Mark Baker, who, after having a rather uneventful race, had it all come to terms right towards the end, and we're going to find out not just about what he thought about his pace, but also those final 2 laps and the drama that came with them. Hello, Mark, can you hear me?
Hopefully, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Mark. You're coming through perfectly.
Excellent.
Firstly, congratulations on the win in the sprint race in the AM class at Silverstone. How does it feel to have taken to the top step?
Pretty impressive, actually. I'm pretty pleased with that. It was definitely a waiting game. I knew I was reasonably quick, but obviously Stefan Vessels, he's pretty quick in the AM class, but yeah, he obviously had some problems, and I managed to keep it on the black stuff.
Indeed, and it was all about keeping it consistent, as you're saying. We saw multiple incidents throughout the race, and I have to ask, obviously, we'll come on to the incident that occurred on the penultimate lap at the final corner very shortly, but before that, just take us through, when you're running at that consistent pace, which you were P4 overall for a considerable amount of time, with a whole pack of pros behind you. What was going through your mind as they were getting a little bit closer and closer, but not close enough to sort of force moves on you? Because we saw you in the end have to move out the way, coming out to turn number 9 in the run-up towards Maggots, and literally just letting the entire field through.
Yeah, well, I could see them coming, and I could see them gaining ground, and it was really, they're not in my race at the end of the day. So it's picking your moment. I think it's just getting it right and keeping it out of their way. Because the last thing I want to do is be involved in an incident, which unfortunately I was coming onto the penultimate lap after letting those guys through. They were quite busy fighting it out amongst themselves.
So talking about the incident, we did see coming onto your final lap, coming out of the final corner, it looked as though there was quite the road traffic collision, shall we say, and you tried to cut to the inside, but ended up being involved right in the thick of it. Just take us through what happened from your perspective and the damage you had to deal with going on to that final lap.
Yeah, well, I saw it all kicking off, and I went. I could see the only reasonable looking gap was sticking to the inside. Then just as I arrived at that gap, the Porsche moved and clipped my inside front wing. Luckily, it was actually not too badly damaged. I think the car was in reasonable shape, although the front wing didn't look particularly healthy from the in-car view. I think, but. Yeah, so just managed to squeeze through with not too much damage, thankfully. My biggest issue was just before the start of the sprint race, my the steering wheel and the screen decided that it was all going to go slightly to the left, so I wasn't sitting quite rightly in the car for that race either.
Oh, goodness me, well, you still prevailed, even with that issue from the start of the race, and also the issue, so the damage you picked up right at the end of the race. And now looking ahead to the feature race, obviously you'll be starting quite far back compared to your peers. What's the plan over the hour?
Just keep consistent, keep out of trouble, make sure I pick the right time for the pit stop. And then with a bit of luck and a few other people having a few problems, hopefully I can at least make it into hopefully a podium position. But we'll just have to see what happens.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on, but until then, congratulations once again on your win in the sprint race, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit for the feature.
Thank you very much.
So hearing there from Mark Baker, very happy and chuffed with his performance when all is said and done. And as he runs away to get ready for his feature race, we now get ready to talk to Gareth Williams, our pro class winner. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to get him in. Hello, Gareth. Can you hear me?
All right, yeah, I can hear.
Gareth, congratulations on the win in the sprint race in the pro class for Silverstone. How does it feel to have taken to the top step of the podium, given it was a very eventful race?
It was eventful, right? It was a bit of a tough comeback. don't know where to start, to be honest. Yeah, I was a bit surprised when I got hit all the rear, and then I just, car just felt a bit nervous after that, and just turning into the corners, it just felt like the rear was floating around, if you know what I mean, and I was a bit wary on pushing it too much, but somehow managed to turn it around and, come out on top.
Indeed, and it all really started off with a good qualifying session from yourself, and it looked as though you were well on your way to pole position, only to see Prouting snatch it away by almost 1.5 seconds in the end. What was going through your mind when you saw Prouting's lap come in?
I need something that he's got in his car. Well, when I first seen it, I thought obviously that's what he must have been. He was like in lap coming into the pits. So it was quite a big difference. But I don't know whether he just did it by accident, I'm not sure, but it's unfortunate sort of things. I think he was starting P3, was it, originally, before that?
Indeed, but in the end you were promoted to the front with, I believe, Prouting having the issues and starting from the pits. And it looked like you had a good start, but you had one of the RD SimSport drivers well on your heels.
Start was alright. Tyres just didn't really seem to switch on that kind of like the first 3/4 of the lap sort of thing. Seems like Lambo was just able to push it a bit harder, and then I haven't watched the replay back or nothing yet, so I'm not sure exactly what happened, but would have liked a good battle between the both of us really, because it looked like we were slightly gapping the cars behind already, sort of thing, on that first lap.
Well, in the end, you were able to turn it around, even with the incident you were involved in, which saw you drop a number of places. And now, as we get ready to go into the feature race, what's your plan going for the 60-minute feature coming from the back of the field?
Survive. It's just getting damage early on, isn't it? Getting caught out in like another incident someone else has had or something daft like that. Happened like last week, and then obviously if you're pitting right at the start, it kind of ruins your race because you're forced to stop again at some point for the extra fuel you need to take on. So just try and stay out of any trouble and see what happens, I guess.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on in the feature, but until then, congratulations on the win in the sprint, and well, we look forward to seeing you out on circuit again.
Cheers, buddy, thanks.
Here and there from Gareth Williams, who rather subdued, but I think quite an exhausting sprint race. And as he was saying there, the qualifying not quite going to plan in the end, being a pip to pole, but taking that pole back with Prouting having those issues with the car and not able to start the race on the grid, but having to start from the pit lane. And then the contact between himself and the drivers around him, seeing Williams drop a number of places, but recovering to take the win at the very end, and a great battle between himself and Maury going to the finish. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we get ready to go racing for the feature race. We're going to be back in approximately 5 to 7 minutes for the build up to the feature. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. We'll be back very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then with the build-up to the feature race, which is due to get underway in just over 4 minutes' time, as all our drivers right now are making their way back into the paddock, if not out onto the circuit, and are getting set to go racing for 60 minutes. With the all-important strategic element, our drivers will need to decide when do they pit. Now, of course, their fuel tanks are restricted to 70%, so that they cannot do the entire race on a single tank of fuel. But whether they opt to do the entire race on a single set of tyres, that's an entirely different matter. And we know the tyre degradation rate at Silverstone can be quite aggressive here. What of a large number of sweeping corners, really putting a lot of stress on the left-hand side tyres. What of this circuit, of course, being a clockwise circuit, so there's more right-handers than left-handers, and so the left-hand tyres will be taking the greater amount of wear. But that will be a question which all of our drivers will need to solve for themselves. Do they take the tyre change and spend longer in the pits? As all our drivers make their way around right now, we do say hello in the chat to Greg B there, and I do like Greg B's comment in the YouTube chat about looks like the field has taken the Coach Verstappen Driving Academy logic there. Indeed, I think referring back to some events recently in Formula 1, and it was a little bit of a hectic sprint race, to say the least, particularly within the Pro Class. There were a number of incidents, but I'm sure those will be addressed by our stewards, and our Pro Class drivers involved will be given the law by our stewards in the near future. We'd also say hello to Daswell there in the YouTube chat, saying GG to Dan. I believe he's referring to Dan Murray, who picked up that brilliant second placing in and was right in there with the chance for the win come the end of the race, but he wasn't quite able to take the win, but he was a very good contender for it. We can also see Katie Eames there in the Facebook chat saying congratulations to Gareth Williams and Mark Baker, the winners in our sprint race. And we can also see Josh Wiggins in the YouTube chat. We say hello to Josh Wiggins and also Polly Pecco, who I believe is the username on YouTube for one Paul Walton. We say hello to Wiggins and Walton, the two RD Sim Sport drivers who we know and love in this series. Wonderful gentlemen, both down in the paddock. And we've also got Carol Potter there in the YouTube chat, which I'm not sure what that means, Carol Potter, but it is the case that VOT FY indeed FYI2 as they make their way around the circuit now, our drivers, and the big FYI for them will be that they do have to take that pit stop, all important pit stop of course. But as we are now waiting to go racing, 2 minutes to go here, I think a lot of our drivers will just be itching to go, and there'll be some drivers who will now try to turn around what was a very difficult sprint race for them into a more successful feature. I think Albanese will be thinking about this one, be targeting having better performances in his sprint race. Indeed, a number of drivers I've heard who had good performances in the feature do want to try and get a more consistent spread of results across the 2 races rather than just pick up a big result in the feature race and not have that result in the sprint. And Albanese, with his defensive driving, of course, brilliant defensive driving throughout, I'm sure the Italian driver will be thinking that today he might have a slightly better opportunity. He started a bit further down the order than he normally would for the purposes of the feature, and what will he be able to do as he makes his way through turn number 14 and on to the hangar straight. 1 minute to go as the countdown continues, and our drivers are getting themselves ready, and as they all make their way around on the circuit right now, we can see Ed May here in the rather colourful liveried BMW M4 coming charging down the hangar straight as well, and as he makes his way on down, it's the case all of our drivers just trying to get in a little bit of lap time. And the form that we have seen, to be fair, we have seen that the BMW M4s seem to have the stronger pace compared to the other cars around here, the 1 lap pace, but the Porsches in particular do also seem to be able to carry a lot of speed through the sweeper corners, particularly through turns 10 through to 14, and that's giving them great opportunities to go on the offensive on the straights, alternatively being able to hold off the fast chargers behind, particularly the BMWs, because the Porsche can just carry on the speed through the sweeping corners and therefore have enough of a gap to stay alive on the straight. And that's the gamble, of course, between the different cars, and that's how the balance of performance works. Meanwhile, Nigel Stockwell, we're going to be seeing that Ford GT come roaring out the gates, I suspect, and the Englishman will want to absolutely make up for what was a dire start to his evening with that sprint race going horrifically wrong, and now he will want to make up for it in the feature race. There is no doubt he will be applying the full pressure of that Ford GT with its the 6-cylinder engine, the V6 engine, I believe 3.5 litres unless I'm very much mistaken, but that's something for you guys and girls to confirm to be in the chat. I know my knowledge of the Ford GT is not 100%, I must be honest with you, but now we get ready to go racing once again, and let's take you through that grid. So starting on pole, it will be Chris Keener alongside him at Mark Sykes. The two drivers having very difficult sprint races, but they start us off on the front row, both AM drivers. Then it will be Tom Delaney and Rick Jansen on row number 2. Rick Jansen being our pole sitter for the Pro class. Liam Tack and Paul Walton on row number 3. Well, this will be in a reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race. Lambert Wedder and Nigel Stock starting on the 4th row. Elwyn Sykes and Davide Favo on the 5th row. And Gareth Mills and Nathan J. Scott on row number 6. As we look outside of our first 6 rows, we come to row 7, Stefan Vessels and Matthew Proughton alongside him. Then Travis Lincoln Hatfield and Mark Baker on row number 8. James Neave and Josh Wiggins on row number 9. And then Stefan Albanese and Ed May on row number 10. And Albanese, as I say, started a bit further down than he normally would compared to his last 3 races. What can the Italian do from P19? Can he make it 2 good performances out of 2? Alistair Kirk and Paul Scott completing row number 11. Paul Williams and Michael Seal completing row number 12. As we're hearing that Mark Sykes and Chris Keener both jumped to the pits, and then it's the case that Dan Murray and Gareth Williams on row number 13 and Kosh Kelly completing our order on row number 14 in P27, the last of our drivers there. But as we now get ready to take it away, it is the case that all our drivers pulling off the line there, and we look to Rick Jansen, who's going to be starting us off from the front row effectively, with our 2 drivers on the front row deciding to jump to the pits here. It's now we wait for Jansen to get us away under the green. That's Delaney as he takes us around. As they make their way out the final corner, it's go, go, go for the feature race as Tom Delaney takes us away from the front of the field. Rick Jansen tucks in behind, and then behind him we've got Liam Tack trying to go on the offensive. Remembering that Liam Tack, of course, having that major moment at the very start of the feature race at Road Atlanta, but he's kept it together this time, as meanwhile Paul Walton behind immediately going on the offensive, and Lambert Wedder, well, these two came together multiple times in the sprint, and they will not want to do so again. As we see Nigel Stock here in P6, he's had a reasonable start, he's held off Nathan Scott behind him, but now as they all come charge on through, it's a much cleaner start this time. No major incidents on the opening few corners. As we look to the blimp here and look a little bit further back, and you see Josh Wiggins as well in P11 already, and Wiggins on a charge here as he now tries to go around the outside of Elwyn Sykes down into the braking zone for turn number 6. And as they come through, I think we've got a car going wide somewhere, and it's Lambert Wedder. In fact, Lambert Wedder has gained massively. He's gained multiple places in a single run as he comes on through. As we look now down to the close cameras once again, Lambert Wedder up into P3 as our drives back the way through, and we can see Walton doing a brief disappearing act there, I think with a bit of a latency issue, but meanwhile in our lead we can see Tom Delaney here. He's got Rick Jansen trying to look for the move, he can't find it. Meanwhile Liam Tack a little bit further behind, trying to hold on to that second place, the AM class right now, and letting the pros come on through over around him as our drivers come rip roaring on through down towards what is Maggots Bend. And as they come charging in, you can see Tack here giving away to Nathan Scott as he's now got the AM driver Davide Favo behind him, and we see Gareth Mills as well in here as it's Stefan Vessels trying to come on through as well, and Vessels will be looking to recover from an awful sprint as they make their way through the 6 corners, through 13 into 14 they come, and Wiggins in the thick of it, as well as Ed May also tries to get involved. They snake their way down to the hanger straight here, all line astern, but you can see Ed May and Vessels trying to sort themselves out into some sort of order here as they make their way on down, and it is the case both in different classes but both wanting to gain places, and Vessels on the inside, Ed May on the outside, and as they emerge from 15 to head down to 60, you can see a bit further out Gareth Mills and Josh Wiggins in a similar situation here. Both of the Porsche drivers trying to find their footing as Vessels on that outside, you can see, was that Stefan Vessels trying to find his way in? It was indeed. He's not been able to do so as they all come on through to complete the opening lap. So after one lap, it's Tom Delaney leading ahead of Rick Jansen in P2, but Rick Jansen and Lambert Wedder here coming at 2 blows, but Wedder parking it behind him in P3, followed by Paul Walton in P4, then Nigel Stock in P5, followed by Nathan J. Scott in P6, as we do see, I believe that's Lambert Wedder making his way around the outside of Jansen, and Walton coming on through as well here as we look back up to the battle for P2, and you can see Jansen just giving way to his teammate, and in the process I think it was the case that Walton just deciding, you know what, I'm going to come through if the door's being made available to me. Meanwhile we can see that it's Nathan Scott who's had a very poor run out of turn number 5, and as they make their way down towards turn number 6 on the way to the straight, it's going to be Nigel Stock on the inside. He's making that Ford GT work, and as they come on the inside here into the left-hander, Stock goes a little bit deep. It's the natural way of the corner, and as they come into turn 7, Stock on the inside right now defending as much as he possibly can to give himself the ability to hold the position in the run up towards turn 9. That Ford GT will be very fast on the run up towards turn 9. The Porsche will have to sit there and watch as the American muscle blows its way away down the straight here towards turn number 9. They change places and stay as they are now as they make the way on into the fast right-hander. Meanwhile, outside of this, we can see it's the case that Liam Tack in P8. He has got Davide Favo all over the back of him right now as Favo goes a bit wide there. And you can see as a result the concertina effect as we've got 4 wide almost coming out to turn 9 up into 10. It's 3 wide and they concertina into 2. And we see Vessel's trying to go for the move on the inside to outside. Oh, goodness me, and Liam Tack there just getting a bit too high on the curbing. And as a result, Tack being thrown wide at Maggotts Bend. As meanwhile, it's the case that Stefan Vessels gains the position now. I think trying to go too wide was spelling the doom attack. As we see that Vessels has dropped a couple of places. He's let Kirk and Davide Favo through as they make their way down towards turn number 15. And Gareth Mills trying to get on the inside as a bit further back. We can see it's the case that we do have what looks to be James Neave getting involved in all of this as they make their way on through as well. And meanwhile, in amongst these cars as they make their way into the braking zone, you can see that Mark Baker just being swarmed on both sides. It's a reverse Moses manoeuvre versus the Ant driver, and Maury making his way around, and Gareth Williams as well as they all come on through to complete another lap as they come through the right-hander at turn number 18. You can see the flashing lights there of the BMW ahead, and that is Paul Scott flashing his lights, and with a livery that's not quite working right now, we'll try and fix that a bit later on. As they all come charging on through once again here, it is the case as we do just reload our driver's livery, so you will have a slightly white field for the time being as they all make their way on through right now. And we look a little bit further up the order. Meanwhile, oh goodness me, and that's Rick Jansen who's gone for a spin. Now what has happened to Rick Jansen is the big question as he tries to get himself back under rhythm. We'll wait and find out as he makes his way back onto the race circuit, but that is very unfortunate for the Dutchman, and that means that Lammit Wedder is now your race leader as they make their way around through turn number 7 and up towards 9 once again on what is lap number 3 for our leaders as they come on through. And Wedder just carrying on that momentum right now, trying to break away from Walton, but can Walton get back in? And that's the question as they all come charged on through into turn number 9 where it's going to be some time. Oh goodness me, and Wedder gets it wrong as well, and the Team Racing Netherlands drivers both having moments on the same lap at different corners, but you have to say that Wedder having a moment not to want to remember. As meanwhile we see Nathan Scott here battling with what is Josh Wiggins. Wiggins coming on through as they make their way through turn number 13 into 14 very shortly they'll come, and Nathan Scott losing out there versus Wiggins, and Wiggins a man on a mission right now to come back on through as they make their way down onto what is the hangar straight here. They come charge on through, and now it's Ed May who finds himself past Lammit Wedder here, and Wedder I think with a flat spot on the rear tyres of that BMW as they come down towards turn number 15. And in the rear view picture we see that Matthew Proutin here goes side by side with Alistair Kirk. Kirk's on the inside. He's going to try and extend the corner. There's a bit of contact there as Proutin keeps himself in it, and the RP Motorsports Prime driver here has to back off for the time being as they come down to the braking zone. The Team TGC driver gains the position, albeit with some slight contact, and further back you can see it's the case that Dan Murray and Paul Scott are at it once again here in the battle for P13. This is the battle for P9 in class, the pro class that is, as they come onto another lap. We ride on the gearbox here of Dan Murray, the Porsche driver, who we know a very smart and a very consistent driver, and he's having to try and hold off the fast charging next gen racing driver in the BMW M4. That is Paul Scott as they make the way up into turn number 3 once again. We're only 6.5 minutes into this race. Already we have seen plenty of moments to remember and moments that some of our drivers will want to forget, but I can tell you right now that Dan Murray will just want to forget about that BMW behind and go chasing after the leaders as they emerge from Village and head on to turn 5 and onto the Wellington straight here. And you can see behind how Neve, how Gareth Williams, how Mark Baker, how Koch Kelly are all queuing up behind Murray as he just not seem to have enough pace by comparison with the others. As they make their way into the corner, it's Gareth Williams on the inside of Neve, and Neve drops a position right now, but will he try and come back around the outside here as they make their way through turn number 7? Neve's going to try and hang it all the way round, but I think that's very bold to try and do it, and as a result we can see that Williams has gained the position. As meanwhile a little bit further back we can see that Michael Sill making the move there on what is Elwyn Sykes, moving up to P20 overall. That's P15 in class, and Sill having to get a move on here as they come charging on through down towards turn number 9. But as we look from Sill to a little bit further up, We can see that with regards to Dan Murray as he makes his way in the... Oh, goodness me! And Gareth Mills involved in a major incident there very briefly as he comes back across the circuit. And I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that was one of the next-gen racing machines that was sent off onto the side of the circuit. And I think that was Paul Scott involved in that incident as well. What on earth happened there? Well, we can see that Michael Sill makes his way through it, and Sill's got it wrong as well. So Sill's been involved in this, and that's a disaster for Sill. But what happened to Paul Scott? Well, that's Gareth Mills who's coming back onto the circuit, and Mills just coming straight across and sending Scott off circuit. Now, I'm not sure what's happened, whether there was something wrong with Mills' car, but Mills almost coming across as if it was the case that Scott was not there, when he definitely was there. But they're both under racing once again. Paul Scott has jumped to the pits as a result of that, and Mills right now is all the way down in the penultimate position. But that contact, a major surprise. And I do wonder whether something had happened before that we haven't seen, as we look back to our live pictures, and we can see it's the case that Alistair Kurt all over the back of Lambert Wedder here, and it looks like the TGC racing driver goes for a lunge there into Village Corner, and he just about gets it done as they make their way on the exit. And now the Huracan is going to be falling victim to the straight line performance of that BMW M4, but is the straight long enough here for the M4 to be able to gain ground on the Huracan as they make their way up towards the corner? I don't think so. I think they're going to stay as they are as they go into left-hander at turn number 6. They make their way on through, and Kirk holding on to that position for the time. He's gained it. He was adventurous to do it, but he's made it work. And now he is going to try and go hunt down May, unless Wedder has something to say about it. And Prouting's not too far behind either as we come to the end of the 9th minute of this 1 hour race right now. And if anything, much like the sprint race, it has been highly unpredictable, and our drivers have been feeling the pinch as they make their way around the British circuit. It's the home of British motorsport, of course, and you can definitely see why, with it being so intense and such a high speed circuit as they make their way on around. Further down the order, we can see that Kosh Kelly here chasing after James Neve, and I think Neve was caught up in that major incident earlier on. He wasn't too heavily impacted in terms of damage, but he hasn't quite got the speed at the moment. And as we see Kelly here trying to go around the inside to outside through 11, and as they make their way through, they're side by side, and as they come on through 12 and up into 13, I think Kelly's just going to be able to do it, although Neve's going to be all over the back of him as they come roaring onto what is the Hangar Straight. We ride on board here with James Neve as he gives pursuit to the Lamborghini Huracan, but you can see the straight line speed of that Ferrari is found wanting versus the Huracan. He does get close right at the end of the straight, but it's not enough, and it's just coming up to the braking zone there. You can see Neve having to fight the steering wheel in order to keep the car steady going through turn number 15, and as he comes now into 16 to the braking zone for the slow sequence that completes the lap, it is the case that Neve losing that position, with Kelly being very brave to make it happen through turns 10 through to 13, and now Neve has to try and come back at this, but a little bit later on. There's still plenty of time remaining. It's not all over yet as they make their way down towards turn number 1 for what for them is the 6th time of asking. And as they make their way on through, we look back to the exterior cameras and we look a bit further down our order, more so as we see that we've got Travis Lincoln-Hatfield here who's chasing after what is Paul Williams, and of course the AM driver here who we're focused on, the American. He is chasing after the Pro ahead of him. He's got a Pro behind him as well of what is Rick Jansen, and Jansen with that major moment earlier on. We are trying to get the replay as to what happened to Rick Jansen when he had that spin coming out of what was turn number 5. In fact, it was here that Jansen had the moment, and now we're going to see what happened. So this was Rick Jansen moments ago, a couple of laps ago, as he emerged from Village Corner at turn number 4. He went onto the grass, and as he's turned the steering wheel, the rear's just gone loose, and fortunately the guys behind were not going to make that impact with Jansen, but Jansen there just getting it wrong, and that has dropped him all the way down the order. It could have been a lot worse, to be fair, but Jansen will be feeling the pinch as we look back towards Lincecum-Hatfield right now as he chases after the two Team Tetra Rouge drivers, and the one he will want to take on is the lead one of the two right now, Mark Baker. Now, will the team principal at Tetra Rouge be on the radio to the pair of them to say they've got to swap the positions? That will be the question. I think that call has been made as we've just seen a car going off circuit in the rearview picture very briefly, and as our drivers resume here, you can see that right now for the two drivers not giving way, and in fact Mark Baker trying, I think, just to stay out there and prove that he's got the pace alongside his teammates. He will not want Lincecum-Hatfield all over the back of him as they make their way through the corners. But whilst this is happening, I can tell you that Ed May has now found his way past Tom Delaney. The Pro driver has got ahead of the AM driver, driver. Tom Delaney, of course, our leader in the AM class here by a considerable margin over Stefan Wessels, but Wessels making great progress as he's building his way up through the field. And right now, Delaney, I think the SVPMR driver, just looking to bring home a strong result here and not looking to fight any of the pro drivers. And you can see there's Stefan Wessels. He is only 4 cars behind his main opponent, and that equates to approximately 2.5 seconds worth of time. But the problem for him, of course, is the fact he's got to try and find his way to stay close to the pros whilst the pros navigate their way past Delaney. But Delaney's not going to want to let any of those pros get through. He will want them to stay between him and Stefan Wessels, and we know how fast the South African is. He comes charging through the field, but will he be able to come through sooner or later? That's the question. We've got a bit of smoke then. Oh goodness me, is that Lambert Wedder going for another moment? And we saw him earlier on coming up at turn number 9, and Wedder has had another moment. The Team Racing Netherlands guys today, it would seem that those BMW M4s they're running are very, very loose on that rear end, and as a result, Wedder now dropping down the order like a stone, and this means now Josh Wiggins can go hunting down Nigel Stock as they make their way out of turn 7 through 8 and up towards 9. But remembering, of course, Nigel Stock in the rather beefy and grunty Ford GT versus the more nimble and agile Porsche 911 and Josh Wiggins here. And Wiggins will have to do it all in the corners and get as close as he possibly can. So that way, the Ford GT's not able to make the major break on the straight. As we see our battle for P2 overall, and P2 in the Pro Class makes its way through the high-speed sequence of corners that results in Maggotts Corner at turn number 13. As they come on through at this point, you can see Wiggins closing up. But now as they make their way out onto the hanger straight coming out of 14, this is where the Ford GT just opens the gap. Even with Wiggins being in the tow, you can see the gap initially opens up until they're halfway down the straight, and that's where the overspeed from the slipstream starts to take effect. But meanwhile, behind we see Tom Delaney there giving away to Alistair Kirk, and that's the case that Stefan Wessels is inching closer, as now there's only 2 drivers between the 2 AM drivers in that battle for the AM class lead as they make their way down into turn number 16. Under braking they come once again. And a bit further down the order, I can tell you that Stefan Albanese here looking to make the move on Paul Williams. He's going to go around the outside, and I think Williams has had a bit of a moment out on circuit because Williams does not look very happy in that car right now. And neither does Stefan Albanese, to be fair. Both cars look as though they've got damage, particularly Albanese on that front right-hand side. It looks as though the bodywork's almost crumpled around the front right tyre there. I think he may have been involved in some contact much earlier on in the race as these drivers make their way onto what is lap number 8. And as they come across that timeline to go around once again, we come to the end of the first 15 minutes of the hour, a quarter done. And right now, whilst it's spread out the field to a degree, I can tell you one thing that has not spread out, and that is the battle for the lead. And you can see Walton, Stock and Wiggins now all coming together, and Wiggins looking for the move on the inside of Stock into turn 6. He's going to try and go for it. It's going to be one of his only opportunities. Stock, to be fair, is going to hold it round the outside to inside here, and Wiggins is going to have to be careful. He's got a huge mass in the form of that Ford GT on the inside. They come out the corner side by side here, and now it's a game of a drag race, and you can see that Wiggins with a greater room on exit, able to be more comfortable on the power. But you look at the Ford GT going, you can see Wiggins there trying to shut the door, and Stock saying, no, I'm here. But in the end, as they make their way through the right-hander, it is the case that Stock runs a little bit wide, but he has to back off. But I do think that right now, Stock will try and come back. If he can stay within 4 tenths of a second and merging out of Maggotts Corner, coming out of turn 14, it will be the case that Wiggins will be vulnerable, but we'll wait and see as they make their way on through. But this is where the Porsche is so strong in terms of its ability to carry speed through the corners. But now here comes Stock, as we can see, building up a lot of speed. We ride on board with the Ford GT drives halfway down the straight, but you can see that gap coming down rather rapidly. But I think in the end it's not going to be enough as we ride on board with the Englishman as he makes his way through turn at number 16, not able to find a way on through this time as he makes his way on down. And it is the case, oh goodness me, and that's Matthew Prouting, who's just had a off circuit there, and I think Prouting involved in a collision with Nathan J. Scott. Let's take a look back at what happened. So this was only moments ago. Nathan J. Scott on the inside, Prouting on the outside down into turn number 15. Now under braking, it looks as though there was a little bit of contact between the 2 drivers there. To be fair to Nathan Scott, he had a lot of room to play with, and Prouting had given him the room. So I think it was a little bit of a tap, and that's called Prouting to go in for a spin. But in the end, it means that Prouting has lost a lot of ground he's gained. He's now dropped down to P11, and in return, Nathan Scott is up to P7 overall, a P6 in class, and Prouting now will need to try and find a way to bounce back rather rapidly indeed. As meanwhile we look a little bit further down the order once again here, and I believe Mark Sykes and just past Chris Keenan as Keenan's gone a bit wide there coming out of the final corner. And the Belgian driver, to be fair, just getting his head down and doing his utmost as he makes his way in the pursuit of Mark Sykes. They come through turns 1 and 2 and in 2, 3. These guys battling for P22, and what for them is P7 in the AM class. As we look from them, we look a bit further up the order once again, and we take a look at Stefan Vessels right now, who has only got Nathan Scott between himself and his target man, which is Tom Delaney. Stefan Vessels, of course, P8 overall, P2 in the AM class right now, chasing down Tom Delaney, and Tom Delaney being the driver just ahead here, the SVPMR Porsche driver, as he makes his way through turn number 9 there and goes a bit wide of apex, and Nathan Scott decides to take an even wider line through the apex there. Well, I think Delaney can take a bit of inspiration in the fact that if he misses the apex, it's a case that the pros also miss the apex as well, as he now has a bit of evidence. But he won't be thinking about that. He'll be thinking more about the fact that he's got Stefan Vessels gradually inching himself closer and closer, lap after lap, and what can he do when Vessels closes up to him? That is the big question, and I think right now he's just got to keep his head down and not worry about it until the time comes. As we are just a bit further up the road, we can see now it's Ed May putting the pressure on Nigel Stock here, as the privateer of Ed May tries to find a way past the Ford GT in the BMW M4. Now, as they make the way into the corner here, we ride on board with Ed May as he makes his way through turn number 17. Now, we are looking at two of the straight line supremacists here in terms of their straight line speed and acceleration. The Ford GT having the greater acceleration out of the two of them, meanwhile the BMW M4 having that top end. But as they make their way through turn number 1 and head into 2, you can see with the engine towards the rear of the Ford GT compared to it being in the front for the M4, how Stock's able to carry such a more aggressive line through the corners. But under braking, that Ford GT is paying the price there, as we can see Ed May going for the move on the inside into turn number 4. He's gone for here and he's sealed the deal for now. But as they make their way through 5 and onto the Wellington Straight, this is where Stock will try and come back, and May immediately goes defensive. He knows that he's got to now hold off the fast charging Nigel Stock as they make their way into turn number 6. Into left hand they go. Stock's not able to get alongside here, but he will try and stay with the M4 as they make their way through turn number 7. And this might give an opportunity coming up into 9. Now, as they come through the right-hander here of 7 and make their way onto the old start-finish straight, it is the case that May hold him firm for now, but he's only got an advantage of 0.2 of a second, and that gap is going to come down very rapidly here as they come up towards turn number 9, but I don't think Stock's close enough here. I think he has to back out and wait a little bit later on as they make their way through, but you can see Stock able to stay with the M4 driver, and will he be able to come back at him in the run onto the hangar straight? That will be the big challenge for Stock, because if he's able to stay this close through the sequence of corners, I can imagine he's going to be right there on the offensive as they make their way through. Well, now it's the time to find out as they emerge out of what is turn number 14, and as they come onto the straight, he's not close enough. His Stock, he's had a poor run out of the corner, and May's had a phenomenal run by comparison, and they stay as they were. Ed May up to P3, Stock down to P4, both overall and in the pro class. But meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that's Nathan J. Scott, our leader in our second place man in this little pack of battlers, and he's behind the leader of the M class, Tom Delaney, as they come through, as Joshua Wiggins into the pits right now. So Wiggins taking that pit stop and deciding to call it early, as we see Dan Morey, they're going for a very daring move on the inside of Stefan Vessels. Now, I think Vessels was going to expect Morey to try and find a way through soon enough, but Morey in the end deciding, you know what, it's too much time being wasted, I need to get a move on. And you can see their Vessels moving out the way, as we do see by looks things that is a BMW M4 coming on through, and that is Gareth Williams coming on through behind as Vessels just waits. But this is the problem right now as they come into the braking zone for 3. Morey looking for the move on the inside here versus Nathan Scott, as Tom Delaney just tries to stay out the trouble here. And goodness me, I think Nathan Scott never saw Morey coming there, and Morey with a very daring move to make it 3 wide. There was contact as Nathan Scott turned in and then only saw Morey at the last possible moment, had to throw the steering wheel back open. But what a daring move from Morey, and it has paid dividends, and what it's done is it's caused Scott to fall backwards into Williams, and Williams now trying to come through. Delaney's on the outside to inside line here as he comes up into 7. Now, will Williams be able to go all the way round Delaney as they come around the corner? Well, it does look as though the SVPMR driver's just trying to stay out of trouble as they come for 8, and Delaney doing everything he can to give Williams space here. And I think it's the case that Delaney's thinking, I've got to battle Stefan Vessels, and he has indeed, as Vessels is now all over the back of him as the P2 driver in the AM class looks at a move here in the run out of turn number 9, and Delaney has been hurt massively from having the pros trying to all come through at once. Stocks as they now make their way through the high-speed sweep section of what is turns 10 through to 14, and as they come on through into the right-hander and Maggots right now, you can see it's the case that Vessel's all over the back of the Porsche driver in front of him as they come charging on through and charging down towards what is turn number 15. They come on down, and it is the case that right now Stefan Vessel's closing up behind, but can he find a move? This is for the lead of the AM class. He's going to go for it, and Delaney right now, he's given him the space to do so, but Delaney, to be fair, he'll know where to put that Porsche. He's able to use it in the end, and Vessel's just not able to get the move done, but definitely showing his first sign that he wants to take the lead as we ride on board the gearbox here of the Porsche driver, currently running P8 overall and leading the AM class. And to be fair to Delaney, whilst he did start towards the front of the field, he is not shy on pace, and he's definitely showing that right now to the South African behind him as they go on to another lap for them. They're now on to lap number 12. They come running through the right-hander at turn 1 here. I think this battle is going to go on for some time. You can see Vessel's backing off right now, and I think what he might be doing is just watching Delaney, seeing where Delaney is able to gain time and where he loses time, where he's vulnerable, and he's already seen an opportunity here as they make their way through a village corner and head up towards turn 5, and you see Delaney there just overworking the car through the corners compared to Vessel's. Vessel's taking it very calm, very collected as they make their way up towards turn number 6. Now, whilst we'd love to stay with these guys, I'm hearing that Nigel Stock is still in the battle with Alistair Kirk here, and Kirk has found his way past Nigel Stock. How did that happen is the question. Well, we'll very shortly give you your answer, depending on whether Stock is able to come back through here in the run up towards 9. He's very close here. The two mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivers will go toe-to-toe, but it is the case that Stock's not close enough, and we are given a brief opportunity, dare I say it, to potentially look back. No, not quite yet, because Stock is still there and hanging on to the back of the Lamborghini Huracan in front of him right now, and Stock really making the beast of the Ford GT a work in terms of sweeping it through the corners, but he is losing out now in the dirt here, losing a bit of front-end downforce as he makes his way through 13 and 14, and he now starts to fall back. Let's take a look at how Alistair Kerr made the pass on Nigel Stock for P3. So this was in the run, I believe, down what was the Wellington Straight. And as they came into turn number 6, you can see Kirk on the inside, and Stock not able to get himself fully alongside on the exit of 6, and what that meant for Kirk was he could shut the door coming into 7 on that inside line. A nice move by Kirk, getting the job done. But meanwhile, I can tell that Stefan Wessels has just made the move for the lead versus Delaney, as we see Gaz Williams and Nathan Scott coming together here, and Gaz Williams able to find his way on through versus Scott. So as Gareth Williams moves up to P6, Stefan Wessels has moved up to take the lead of the AM class. How did he do it? Let's take a look back. I think it was in the run down towards turn 15 here, and under braking Delaney gave him the space on the inside here, and Wessels with the overspeed, and this time hooking up that brake point, and the South African driver coming through very cleanly indeed, and as a result now trying to make the breakaway. I think Delaney in two minds about that one, whether to fight it or not. He's already 1.5 seconds down. I think what Delaney is priding himself on is that if he battles too much, he's going to lose time, and he's going to see someone like Mark Baker, who's in P3 in the AM class, come on through right now. So for Delaney, this is about just getting the good result in the bag. He's not too worried about winning this race. He just wants to get a good result in, and he is closing back up a little bit to Wessels, as Wessels has a bit of a poor run through the opening sector. But I think I can see the logic that Delaney's going for, and it has to be respected in the fact he just wants to get good points on the board. And why wouldn't you? Silverstone, a very challenging circuit, but if he can get those points on the board today, they will set him up well going into round number 5 next time out. But we'll come to round 5 later in terms of what's happening there. Let's focus on the here and now, and the here and now tells you that whilst the battle for the lead of the AM class has concluded for the time being, it is the case that Paul Walton leading in the Pro class right now. This RD Simsport driver in what is the lead ahead of Ed May in P2, and he's only half a second back. But do remember, as they make their way down to the hangar straight, we did have our original leader come into the pits, and that was Josh Wiggins, who's currently in P17, and he is sizing up Paul Williams. Now, where is Wiggins, you ask? Well, here is Wiggins chasing after Paul Williams in the run down towards turns 10, 11 and through to 14. And right now, Josh Wiggins needs to try and scythe his way through the field as Paul Walton is into the pits, and Alistair Kirk are into the pits as well. So right now, a good number of drivers deciding to pit before the halfway point, and Wiggins with the major undercut here, and he's going to look for the move versus Paul Williams, and this is quite a critical move for Wiggins. He needs to get this done, because if he doesn't get this done right now, he will be in a difficult situation in terms of losing time, and he gets done with Williams going to the inside but not able to defend it fully, and as a result, Wiggins getting to place, and that could be critical in been seeing him come up through the field. Now, where are the other drivers? As Wiggins comes on through, well, Ed May has stayed out, as has Nigel Stock. But meanwhile, Dan Murray staying out as well. Gareth Williams behind. But what about Wiggins? That is the big question. As Wiggins now makes his way through the right-hander here to complete his current lap. We are waiting to see where our fellow drivers are coming out of the pits. Well, Alistair Kirk's making his way out of the pits right now, but Wiggins has jumped in. Where is Walton? There's Walton and Wiggins just being behind Paul Williams, and I think that's the difference, where Walton just had a clear run in the end whilst being up in the lead pack. Wiggins having to try and siphon his way on through, and it's the case that Wiggins has come out behind his teammate. Now, will they try to work together to make the break away from Kirk behind? I would presume they are going to try and work some magic together, because we did see that at Daytona, for example, where the two of them worked hand in hand and it did work out quite effectively. Will they be able to do it again here today at Silverstone? That's the question as they make their way through turn 6 and up into 7. Meanwhile, I can tell you further up the road, our drivers who've yet to pit and our leaders in the pro class, we've got Williams and Murray coming together here, and Gareth Williams on a charge here after Dan Murray as they make their way into the high speed flying sequence here. It's an absolute charge as they come on through the corners, but right now you can see that Maury just trying to hold on to that position and having a difficult time. They're making his way out of Maggots Bend and coming up onto the hangar straight, and I do think that right now Williams is going to be looking for the move here. He's getting very close, and they're only halfway down the straight as they make their way in towards the right-hand curvature for turn number 15. He looks at it, Williams, but he decides not to in the end. He's not close enough as he comes through the corner, but meanwhile, looking from these guys getting close together as they make their way on down. Neither of them ducking into the pits this time, and Williams not looking for the move. We can see that Walton all over the back of his fellow Lamborghini driver now of Linscombe Hatfield, and the AM driver at this point I think will just be trying to keep his head down, and he may be cognizant of the fact he's got two pros behind him, not in the same class as him, but of course remember it's his debut. He may not be fully aware of who he's racing and who he's not, and that does happen at the start of the season. It is the case that our drivers have to just keep in mind who they're racing amongst. They will have been briefed of course before going racing, but when you're fresh you may not have the names in mind, and Walton here looking on the inside into turn 20, and it is the case that you can see Wiggins coming on through as well here. The two RD Simsport drivers using the lead driver there to essentially create the space, and they both come through together as they make their way through turn number 1. On to lap number 15 they go, and they continue the charge. We've got a lot of smoke there coming up on the corner. I think that's Kosh Kelly who's had a moment. Let's take a look back at what exactly's happened. This was into turn 1, and the Englishman making his way into 2. Does he simply attack the curb too aggressively? As he turns in, he lags and then does a disappearing act before reappearing, spinning there into turn number 3. I think that was a lock-up on the brakes, and that caused the car to pirouette off circuit there. But indeed, a very stylish one. It's very hard to track him at certain points. But now, as we see here, Wiggins and Walton trading places here. Wiggins faster in the opening half of the lap compared to Walton. And you can see behind Alistair Kirk flashing his lights here, trying to get the message through to Linscombe Hatfield. Look, just let me go. We're not fighting. And as they make their way through turn number 7, you can see Kirk immediately getting through. I think Linscombe Hatfield interpreting that as, look, you're on a different strategy to me. We're in a different race. Don't fight this one. And Hatfield obliging quite nicely there for Kirk. And that is bringing him close. But Kirk has lost out in that pit window. He's lost out to the two RD Simsport drivers, and he's now got to try and close back up as they make their way on through. Meanwhile, in the battle for P3, I can tell you that Dan Murray still leading ahead of Gareth Williams, but this time they come down to turn 15. Williams on the inside. He's still not close enough for each lap. He's getting an inch closer each time, and what he's doing is he's thinking about the move. He's daring the move to occur. He's trying to lull Murray into going deep into the corner, but Murray's saying no at this point. As we say hello in the chat to Titan Taylor, Carol Potter, Pedro the Natty, and also Bernice McCormick there in the YouTube chat, and hello to all of you, and thank you for tuning in, and I hope you're enjoying things so far. And so all those of you who've just tuned in recently, welcome. You are watching round number 5 of the NXTGEN Racing GT3 Championship Season 2 at Silverstone, and this is a Lobby 2, and right now halfway into the feature race, you can see it's the case that Gareth Williams all over the back of Dan Murray in the battle for what is P3 out on the circuit, but we do believe this is a bit further down the order in terms of when all the pit stops are complete in the pro class. And as our drivers come on through at this point, we'll look a bit further down the order, and I can tell you that Chris Keenan right now, after seeing Stefan Albanese take his pit stop, and Keenan's already made a pit stop as well, he's trying to chase after what is here Albanese for P19 overall. But remember, these two in different classes, they're not battling for points among one another. As we see Keenan there taking a rather gentle run out of turn 17, not able to carry as much speed on the exit of the corner. But meanwhile, looking a bit further up the road, it's the case that Mark Sykes and Mark Baker. Well, Mark Sykes getting out ahead of Mark Baker here, and as they make their way on through, both drivers have made a pit stop. Now, has Mark Sykes still got to do another stop? Well, Baker has come out behind, and this is not good news for the Briton right now, who finds himself in P7 in class, P18 overall, and a long way off of the potential podium, which currently right now, that final spot on the podium, albeit he's yet to pit, is owned by Travis Linscombe Hatfield, who's all the way up in P12. But right now, Baker trying to get a move on, and he's got to find a way past a fellow Mark in front, and that is a Mark Sykes as they make their way through turn number 6 and into 7. Now, as they come on through there, meanwhile, it is the case a bit further up the order. I can tell you that Walton all over the back of his teammate once again here, and these two, I think they're using Wiggins as the pace car here as they make their way on through. To be fair, when I say that, it's not to be unfair to Wiggins. He's got a lot of pace, as has Walton. The two of them literally neck and neck on pace, and as they make their way down onto the hangar straight here, they are trying to make that breakaway from Kirk. But to be fair to Alistair Kirk, he is putting in phenomenal laps and matching them lap after lap, if not going faster. So Kirk is not hanging around. He knows he needs to stay with these guys as they make their way through turn 16 and down towards turn number 16. Once again, coming through turn 15 only moments ago as we take a brief sip of water. As our drivers coming through to go on to what for them is lap number 17 here, it now becomes a case of seeing how the strategies play out, and we do have that big question mark in terms of when are our remaining leaders going to pit. And speaking of remaining leaders yet to pit, Gareth Williams and Dan Murray coming to blows again as they make their way down towards what is this time the braking zone for turn number 6. They come off of the Wellington straight, and Williams getting the move done versus Murray. A huge overspeed, but he's carried a lot of that speed in deep into turn 7. And fortunately for Williams, he's able to get the car stopped. But Murray there looking at that potential comeback. But Williams getting the job done. Now, will Murray be able to stay close in the run through what is heading out of turn 9 and down towards 14? We ride on board with the Briton as he chases after Williams here. Let's see if the Altitude Esports driver is able to stay close enough. We will have the handling to his advantage, but not the straight line speed here. But if he can stay within 2 to 3 tenths, he may have an opportunity in the run down towards turn number 15. Through the sweep as they come then, and in towards Maggotts Bend as they come through 12 and into 13. And to heavy braking zone, you can see Williams there all out of shape coming through the corners. But in the end, he is able to get a line which offers him some speed on the exit of 14. And Williams able to stay safe for now, but almost getting it very wrong there. And Murray not close enough this time to go on the offensive. He has to wait again for an opportunity later on as they come down through the gears to third gear and get ready to make their way into the final 3 corners. But they stay as they were for the time being, neither of them ducking into the pits either. And it does look as though right now Murray content to follow Williams and keep that pressure on. But you can see the difference in body language of the two cars, whereby it's the case that Murray just so much tighter to those apexes, able to push the car through the corner more comfortably, whereas Williams, it's almost as if he's having to force that M4 to go where he wants it to right now, wringing the neck out of the M4. I'm sure it's the case for Murray as well. He will be absolutely pushing the Porsche 911, but as they make their way through 2 and up into 3, you can see Murray right there just looming, waiting for Williams to make one small mistake, and he'll be all over the back of him as they make their way through Village and head around on towards what will be the Wellington straight once again as we look to our exterior cameras here, and they come on through the left-hander that takes them onto the straight. Out of 5 and now down towards turn 6, and it's the case Murray still not close enough right now to capitalise and go for a move, but he is inching close, and I think Murray enjoying this opportunity to put that pressure on as he makes way on through. We're hearing that Mark Sykes into the pit lane after he's had a moment out on circuit, but right now we're focused on this battle for P3, and they are inseparable, the two of them. And as they make their way out of turn 7, we do have to cut away briefly to the growing battle for what is P9. And you can see here is the case that Josh Wiggins right now, as he makes his way through, he is our lead driver who has made his scheduled pit stop. That should be pointed out right now. So all eyes down in the paddock in terms of the strategist will be on Josh Wiggins in terms of how strong that early undercut will be. But as he makes his way out of turn 7 and heads around towards 9, you can see that Walton and Kirk have closed up behind and are trying to get into the mix as they make their way onto turn number 9 once again. At 24 minutes of racing remaining right now, and it is all starting to build back up to a crescendo as they come on through turn number 9 and head down towards 10. And Wiggins, you would imagine if everything goes to plan, he could be our overall leader once all the pit stops are complete. But meanwhile, we look from Wiggins back to Dan Murray here, who's chasing after Williams, just cannot find a way to get past the Briton ahead of him as they both come down. Will we see Maury peel into the pits? No, not quite. They both stay out for another lap here as they make the way on through, and as they come through the corners, we look back to Walton chasing after his teammate. You can see Alistair Kurt now on the back of the two RD Simsport drivers here. The TGC Racing driver Alistair Kurt keeping that pressure on as much as he possibly can as they make the way down into turn number 16. And for Kirk, what do you do at this point is the question. Do you fight with the guys in front of you, knowing that you guys are essentially the leaders who've made a pit stop, or do you wait? Well, I think for Kirk, he's got to try and bite the bullet and just wait briefly, although to be fair, right now you can see he's getting very close to the back of Walton. Perhaps try and find a way past Walton and get in between the two drivers, but he won't want to attack too much now, because if they all start squabbling, it will be the case that they will give an opportunity for the likes of Ed May and Nigel Stock to come out right amongst them, if not further up the field, as they make their way through turn number 3 and into 4. Now, as they come charging through the corners right now, we can see as they make their way through the village, it's the case that Walton goes a little bit deep, but Kirk's not able to capitalise. And as they come through the left-hander at turn number 5, no change right now as James Neve did come into the pits whilst these guys were making their way on through. I should point out Neve emerging for the pit lane right now, and he's come out in P14 overall, and that is effective for him. What is P11 in class? And in fact, Mark Baker's just got past him as Neve's getting back up to speed. But we ride on board with Kirk right now as he makes his way through turn number 7. Now, the frustrating thing for Kirk, of course, is for the RD Simsport drivers, what they could do here, if Kirk decides to go aggressive, of course, in the team game, what the RD Simsport guys can do, they can essentially split and have one driver go defensive, the other driver break away. But they won't want to do that, they want to get maximum points, but that's one opportunity they have to them. As you see there, Kirk sliding on entry into turn number 9, a bit of understeer from the double dirty air of the two drivers ahead of him, and losing that front end downforce as they now make their way through turn 10 and 11. But that's the thing that Kirk's got to do. He's got to be patient, he's got to wait and use the drivers in front of him as a means to an end, a means to get up onto that podium. They now come charging down onto the hangar straight once again here. You can see he's a little bit further back this time, Kurt, but they've been like this for some time and not able to capitalise any further for the time being as they come into turn number 15 for what for them is the 19th time of asking. As we look for them to further up the road, we can see still our leaders, our top 4 staying out there. In fact, our top 5 staying out as Tom Delaney comes into the pits from what was the lead of the AM class here, and he's pitted, and it's the case that our P2 driver of Travis Linscombe Hatfield, P2 in the AM class, P10 overall, has yet to pit, so he will take the lead and he'll have the opportunity, I believe, to lead a lap on his debut. But for Linscombe Hatfield, he will have to be cognizant of the fact that he's going to have to pit, and then it will be this man here, Stefan Vessels, who, having made his pit stop right now, is going to come through to take P2 in his class off of what will be Delaney, and we suspect he will then go on to take the leading class and pull it through. As meanwhile, we look back up to the battle here between Alistair Kirk and Paul Walton, and Walton going deep. They're coming out of turn 4 this time, and the two of them, as they emerge onto the Wellington straight here, well, Kirk going defensive, he's capitalised on opportunity, and as they make their way down towards turn 6, you can see Kirk here with the overspeed to defend, and as they come into the braking zone, will Walton be able to go all the way around? He's going to try and put it right on the inside into turn 7. He's got it parked there on the apex, to be fair to Walton. Very classy stuff, and as they make the way out of the corner, you can see Kirk having to use all the width of the road there as Walton keeps the door open just enough for Kirk to have the racing room. As they make the way back onto the straight here, you can see that now Walton having to go defensive. The fight is on. These two have now put the gloves on and they're going boxing around Silverstone as they make the way through turn number 9. Of course, no contact preferably, but as they make the way down into the high-speed sweepers, Kirk already looking to try and come back at Walton as they make the way up towards Maggots Bend. And in return, this does mean that Wiggins is now able to make the breakaway as we hear that Ed May's into the pits. As I look out my commentary box window, he's in, Gareth Williams is in, Dan Murray's in, Nigel Stock still stays out on circuit. So right now, we've only got 2 drivers ahead of these guys who have yet to pit. Now, how will it all play out? And that's Nigel Stock and Matthew Prouting. Well, Prouting's into the pits as well. So Nigel Stock goes into the lead of this race. But meanwhile, as we see Kirk start behind Walton once again here, where will they come out in relation to May, Maury, Williams and Prouting? Well, they're all coming through right now through turn number 16, and May is leaving his pit box and he's making his way on down. I think this is going to be enough for May to jump ahead of Wiggins, Walton and Kurt. Where is Wiggins, you ask? Well, he's just making his way into turn 1 right now, and this will mean that Ed May has jumped the trio here who pitted earlier. And where is May in comparison? Well, he's here just making his way through turn number 3, and and into 4, and that's the gap right now as Wiggins will try to close up to May as soon as possible, as May will try to get those tyres back up to temperature, as we're hearing that Linscombe Hatfield is into the pits from the lead of the AM class, promoting Stefan Vessels back into the lead of the AM class. Now the strategies are all playing out, but Wiggins has now got to get a move on. I think Walton's trying to get that message through, because look how close the two teammates are together as Walton sweeps to the inside. Now they're going to trade places, and you can see it's the case that Kirk tries to come through as well, and Wiggins tries to shut the door here. They create the rolling wall of RD Simsport as they make the way into turn number 7. Wiggins holds on right now, and I think for Kirk it must be frustrating the fact he hasn't got a counter, he hasn't got a teammate he can use to try and exploit like the two RD Simsport drivers, and it's completely legal, I should say, ladies and gentlemen, the way they are driving the RD Simsport guys. Do not blame them, they're trying to work this together to get the maximum possible points for their team as well as for each driver. I'm just pointing out that Kirk right now would probably love to have a teammate who can work with him to take on the two guys in front of him, but this is brilliant stuff between the trio, with Kirk having to try and invent a way as the RD Simsport guys have swapped positions, and now Kirk is chasing down the Porsche of what is Joshua Wiggins as Nigel Stock is into the pits. He's our last driver from the leaders, in fact he's our last driver out of everybody to come into the pit. But Ed May right now, you can see in the bottom of your picture as he makes his way into turn number 15, it is the case he's trying to make the break from Walton, Wiggins and Kirk, and you can see here it's the case that Walton able to hold his line, Wiggins goes defensive and Kirk takes the natural racing line. The three, they will be aware of the fact they are chasing that leader, and you can see Kirk on the inside getting the better run out to turn number 15, getting his nose in, and as I think Wiggins went to shut the door, Kirk just simply saying I am here whether you like it or not, but he hits the apex curve, he hits the sausage, and Wiggins makes contact with the rear of Kirk there, and it's the case Kirk making a small mistake and Wiggins having nowhere to go other than tap the Huracan in front of him. They all make it through. Is there considerable damage to the cars? I don't think so, perhaps some light aero damage, but they carry on racing, but they space out now to a degree as Nigel Stock has come out in P2 through the pit window, and that means now Ed May has got a brilliant opportunity to run away with this as Nigel Stock finds himself in the battle for what is potentially a podium here in the feature race at Silverstone as they come on through turn number 5. And that Ford GT, to be fair, we saw how strong it was on the straights, but through the corners it did struggle by comparison here, and Stock will be all too aware that because he's had these three drivers behind him come on through before, but right now the stock car racing driver making his way through turn number 7 as they come on through the right-hander here of what is turn number 7. It is the case that he's going to try and hold on and try and just break away and be as inconvenient as possible in terms of just providing a wall of dirty air for Walton, Kirk and Wiggins to drive into through the corners, because Stock does have that straight line speed, but for how long can he hold on? We still have 16 minutes of racing to go, plus the overtime from the final lap that our leaders on as they make the way through turn number 9 and head up towards 10. But you can see already Stock being reeled in here. This is not comfortable positioning for Stock as they make the way on through, and as they come charging on down towards what is turn number 13, the all critical right hander here as we jump to the wide angle lens, and as they make the way through turn number 13, 14, you can see Stock having a poor run. And Walton's all over the back here as they come underneath the gantry on what is the hanger straight. And as they make their way down the braking, Stock going defensive, he's going to make Walton go all the way round the outside. And Stock's got to try and keep it tight here, because if he leaves that door open on the inside, you can see Walton with the natural racing line forcing Stock into a poor position. And as they come down to 16, Stock continues to defend. Walton's going to try and go around the outside to inside, but he goes a bit deep as Walton. Stock gives him the space to be fair, but you can see that Kirk now coming back on through the inside here through 17. And Alistair Kirk seizing the opportunity to take P3, but now can he find his way past Stock, or will Stock prove to be just as much a brick wall for Kirk as he was for Walton? This is absolutely on its edge stuff right now, because as they make their way around, Ed May is just disappearing into the distance. He's now 8 seconds clear of this battle for P2, and you can imagine Kirk, Walton and Wiggins don't want to be fighting with Stock, and as they make their way through turn 4, Stock goes deep and Kirk gets the move done into Village. But to be fair now, this is a great opportunity for Stock to come back at the Lamborghini Huracan in front of him, as we see Walton and Wiggins just behind waiting for their turn, and now Stock's going to look for it, but you can see that Kirk's gone defensive here as look at Walton, he's trying to look for an opportunity to get it on the inside. He's too far back, but Stock's going to try and hang it around the outside to inside, but he goes wide there and rejoins the circuit. Now you can see Walton trying to use the momentum there of taking the ideal line as they make the way out of 7, but he has to back off, and Joshua Wiggins has to lift off the throttle, and I think there may have been a tiny bit of contact with his teammate, but Wiggins in the end falling to the despair of trying to exit a corner 3 wide, and now drops down to P7. That promotes Dan Mori and also Gareth Williams up into this fight, and Alistair Kirk has found his way on through, but he's still got Stock putting pressure on here as they make the way on through. But Wiggins, with one little moment, has turned his race upside down, and you have to feel for Wiggins having made such an undercut, and it's now gone horribly wrong, as we can see that Kirk holding on to that P2 for the time being. The gap to leader now 9 seconds. May is just running away, as meanwhile Kirk tries to hold on to P2. Stock all over the back of him, but Stock's not close enough this time as they come up towards turn number 15. And I think it's going to be the situation that for Kirk right now, he's just got to try and hold on for one more lap and break that toe. Just make sure that gap opens up to about half a second, and he's got it done. As you can see, Walton behind just falling back a little bit right now, and I think just building himself back up. And I do think that will be one of those situations where Walton right now will be thinking, as my teammate just lost out for a little bit of contact between us, we'll carry on races. We see Stock, they get a huge amount of oversteer there, coming through the final corner, just running a little bit too aggressive on the steering, and as a result losing momentum here as he settled the car back down, drifting it through turn number 18. And as he goes on to lap number 24, he right now will absolutely have his heart pounding in his chest at the thought of trying to bring home a podium here and trying to close down to Kirk. But I think Kirk is now making the breakaway as Stock has gone a bit deep into turn number 3, and I think the Englishman has now got Walton coming back with a vengeance here as they make the way through turn number 5. It'll be Walton versus Stock as they make the way onto the hangar straight here. The RD Sim Sport driver not close enough right now, but trying to inch closer with every metre of the circuit as they make the way down into 6. Not there this time, but you can see in the rear of your picture very briefly that Gareth Williams also close up in this battle right now. We know the BMW M4 driver would love an opportunity to get onto the podium, having taken the win in the sprint race. Can Williams get into this fight? He's got the time to do it. They've still got 12 minutes. They've still got roughly 6 to 7 laps to go, and that will be enough time for Williams to get involved if he's able to close up. Right now, Williams being 2.1 seconds back, but forget about that, because right now Walton is trying to get the move on Stock. He's as close as he's ever been coming out to turn number 9. He's all over the back of the Ford GT, but will he go for it here? No, he waits. He knows the opportunity is in the run down towards turn number 15. He just needs to be this close coming out to turn 14 onto the hangar straight. Will he be able to do it here? It's looking a very smooth run here from Walton, and as they emerge from the corner, he's there. He's within 2.5 tenths as they make the way onto the straight. This is going to be his opportunity. You'll see Stock stay to the left hand side here of our camera. It'll be the right hand side of the circuit, and as they make the way charging down, it's going to be Walton trying to go around the outside, but will he be able to find it? I don't think so right now, but as they make the way through, you can see Stock having to park the car on the apex to get it in the way of what is Walton. As they make the way down, Walton tries to put his nose up the inside into 16. Stock closes the door and says there's no way through there. If you want it, go around the outside, not the inside. And as they make the way out of 17 into 18 once again, Walton continues to put the pressure on, and he's not able to find a way on through for the time being as they go on to another lap. Now, whilst these guys are battling, I can tell you that Mark Baker has got past Linscombe Hatfield for what is P2 in the AM race class, and as meanwhile we continue to watch the battle for P3 here in the Pro class, we will have to cut away very shortly because some overtakes have been made further around the field. But again, Stock has gone very deep into turn 3, and Walton just trying to find a way to stay this close as they make their way onto the straights. But the problem is, every time he gets close enough, Stock seems to have an answer. As they make their way now down onto Wellington, we can see heading up towards turn 6, Stock goes defensive, but Walton looks at the move. But he's not able to find it, is Walton. And as they come on through the corner right now, Nigel Stock simply holding the Lamborghini at bay. But how long can he keep this up? Can he keep it up for another 10 minutes? Because if so, this will be a huge effort as they come out of turn number 7 and head down towards turn number 9 as they make their way through the right-hander on the old start-finish straight here. But as we look a bit further back, we take a look at how the move was made for P2 in the AM class by Mark Baker on Travis Linscombe Hatfield. So this was in the run effectively coming out of turn 7 and through turn number 8 they went up towards turn number 9. Now, did Mark Baker go all the way around the outside of the American as they made the way through the corner? It looks like he did indeed, and Baker in the end, with a rather brave move, got the move done and moved up the position. As we go back to live pictures once again here, Walton once again very close to stop, but Stock's going to make him go all the way around if he's going to look for the move here. They come down now. What will Walton do differently this time? Well, he hasn't put as much pressure on the move as Stock comes on through, and as Walton makes his way through the corner, he does get a very strong run. Now, will Stock go defensive? Of course he will there. Walton's close enough to force that, or is he? As Stock decides to park it back onto the racing line. Now, I think Walton at this point might be trying to lull Stock into a false sense of security as he hits the sausage curve there of 17, and we did see him clip the sausage curve of 18 in the sprint race and send the car into the stratosphere, but Walton will be pushing for everything he's worth as he makes his way on to another lap here. The time is running out, and look who's closed up now for this battle for P3. Gareth Williams is there, and he will smell a potential podium as we see Paul Scott coming out of the pits there, a lap down in P25. One of our last of our runners, albeit it's Liam Tack who's the last of our ongoing runners in P26, the AM driver, as meanwhile we continue to see here Williams inching closer to the back of Walton and Stock as they make their way down towards turn number 6. We look to the blimp camera here, and you can see that Walton all over the back of the Ford GT. He's very close this time, and under brake, and it's going to be a battle of bravery on the brakes. He's going to go for it all the way round, and you can see Stock there holding that inside to outside line. Walton outside to inside. He's still there, and as they make their way into turn, I think this is the opportunity that Walton wanted. He's seizing it as they come on through, and now it's about a battle on the accelerator, and as they emerge at turn 7, Walton is ahead, but now he's got to try and hold it all the way up to and including the run to 15, and you can see Stock is already coming back here into turn number 9. They go there side by side here. Who's going to back out? Well, neither driver does, and they give one another space, but Walton just about keeps his nose ahead. But you can see Stock now coming back with the Ford GT's prowess in the acceleration game, and you can see Gareth Williams trying to get in as they go side by side into 10 through 11. They're still side by side into 12 here. Walton does not want to give this up. He knows that he's got to hold on, because if Stock stays ahead, he will have to deal with Williams, and Williams will not be hanging around as they make the way onto the hanger straight here. Walton is ahead, but now it's one more major corner to try and hold on as they come down towards 15, as there's only 7 minutes remaining. Stock's going to try and go around the outside under braking into 15. He puts his nose ahead, but Walton now comes back on through on the more comfortable line. Stock's still all over the back of the RD SimSport driver. You can see Gareth Williams looking to the inside here, and Williams looks here at the move here into turn number 16, and he turns it into an opportunity as Stock goes deep and clips the exit curve there. Stock losing out 2 positions in the end over the course of the lap, but brilliant racing between the 3 of them. And now with Walton up to P3, can he break away from Gareth Williams, or will Williams now put the pressure on Walton, much like Walton was putting the pressure on Stock, with only 6.5 minutes to go? 3 or 4 more laps to go here at Silverstone, and my goodness, it is going to come down to the wire in terms of who is going to be on that final step of the podium when all is said and done. Brilliant racing between the drivers here, and as they continue to make their way on through right now, and I can see in the YouTube chat you guys and girls enjoying it. Jordan Hayden in particular, and also Titan Taylor there, and we see Benji Racing cheering on Gaz Williams as well, and most likely looking forward to seeing what Williams can do to get on the podium. And well, I can see you all enjoying it. That's fantastic to hear, as we see now Gareth Williams trying to go on the offensive. If you don't mind, folks, we're going to stay with these guys because this is the closest battle right now out on circuit for a place within a given class, and as they make their way on through turn number 8, you can see Walton literally trying to cut as much off the turn 8 as possible here. He knows Williams is looking to come on through. He does not want the Briton to gain that position come the end of this race, as they make their way on down towards turn number 11, and as they come charging on down towards the corner right now, it's the case that Williams has got to wait here and be patient about it. Where can he go for the move? That will be the big question. Well, I think it's going to be the case he'll need to get within about 3/10 of a second to Walton and then look for it on one of the long straights. He's not close enough right now, and the ideal straight, of course, would be down on the hanger straight here as they come rip-roaring on down, and you can see, meanwhile, in the rear of your picture there, that's Nigel Stock with Paul Scott behind him, rather than it being what is the other NXTGEN racing car, but it is a lap down effectively. Paul Scott's a lap down on Nigel Stock, so Stock will not be too worried. But you can see Dan Morey closing up in the rear of your picture to the back of Stock very gradually as they make their way on through the corners here, and as they come charging on through right now. No change at this point in time, but we are waiting to see how it all plays out as our drivers make their way around the circuit once again here. Now, as they come on through in the meantime, we can see it's the situation that with Kelly trying to get a little bit closer to the back of Delaney further down the order. There's no real changes in positions upcoming outside of the battle here for P3, which is why we're staying with it at the moment. I can tell you that Delaney has just given up the position to Kelly, or I say that, I think in fact the two of them are trading places here. In fact, they are battling for position, and this is not within the class, this is overall, but in the end I think Kelly's got the move done versus Delaney. Delaney P2 within the AM class right now to our leader in the class. Of course, Stefan Vessels is much further up the road by comparison, but right now we have got a case that our class battles are quite spread out. The only pair that are close together, of course, are Walton and also Gareth Williams, but I'm hearing that Delaney and also Kelly still very nose to tail, battling side by side through most of the corners, and neither one of them wanting to give up the position as they make the way on through right now. I think for Delaney, he's enjoying the prospect of battling with one of the pros, as meanwhile I think Kelly's trying to get a move on here, chasing after Nathan Scott, who's the best part of 13.5 seconds up the road. But as we look from this back to Gareth Williams chasing down Paul Walton right now, what can he do? There's not long left in the day here, but he is closing up his Williams, and they have got a back marker ahead of him right now. They are closing up to the back marker of Chris Keenan, who's had a pretty poor run out of what is Maggotts Bend. So as a result, I think Keenan may afford the slipstream here to Walton as they make the way on down the hanger straight. Now we can see there it's the case that Keenan just staying out of the way. He doesn't want to get involved in this one. He just wants to have a clean run to the end as they make the way up towards turn number 16. You can see Williams all over the back of Walton as we ride on board here with the BMW driver, and it is the situation that right now Williams just trying to find a way to poke a hole in the armour of what is the Lamborghini Huracan driver in front of him as he rides on the sausage curve there at 16, trying to use that to help him rotate the car here. A little bit cheeky, a little bit daring, but Williams will find any which way to try and gain an advantage legally if it gives him the opportunity to get that P3 as they come on to what for them we suspect may be the penultimate lap as they make the way through the right hander of turn 1, and Williams this time much closer as they come down into turn 3, into the braking zone they come here, and you can see the situation whereby Walton now I think having to think about his defence just as much as thinking about taking his racing line. Williams here taking a much smoother exit through turn number 4, and as they make the way out to the corner right now you can see whilst he's had the better exit he hasn't been able to close up too much, and Walton able to use the acceleration of that Lamborghini to his advantage as they make the way down towards turn number 6. It's still advantage Walton as they come through into the long left-hander, but Walton there really trying to get the car stopped, and Williams able to close up to a degree, but he went a bit deep. Both drivers literally driving to the limit of the grip available to them as they exit out of the corner. You can see Williams there struggling for the exit out of turn 7. That's opened the gap up to 5.5 tenths, and I think Walton has done enough at this point to give himself safety before the final lap as they make the way on in. Of course, there is one more lap, and one mistake could see it all change, and you can see it there already with Williams taking a much better run through turn number 9 compared to Walton. Walton in fact losing almost 2 tenths of a second there through one corner, and as they make the way through the sweepers now, can Walton get it back into a controllable position as they make the way into Maggotts Bend? Our leader, I can tell you that right now our leader is coming through turn number 16, and that's Ed May. Of course he's heading towards that final lap soon, but right now we continue to focus on the battle for what is P number 3, and as they make the way up towards turn number 15 themselves, it is the case Williams are just not close enough to capitalise, although we can see it's the case he's all over the back of Walton, and Walton there in fact really struggling for the exit of 15, not able to get the car settled down. They make the way into the 16. The last lap has begun. Ed May has gone onto the last lap, and Alistair Kirk has also followed him onto it, and then these two are coming through soon as we see Walton going wide there at 17 onto the sausage curb, and now this is going to be Williams' opportunity as he's going to have the run, but will he go for it into turn number 1? No, he's not going to dare it into 1, but Williams now, if he wanted an opportunity, Walton has given him one with the smallest of errors as they make the way through 2 and up into 3. Into the heavy braking zone they go. Williams not able to find a move this time as they come up towards Village at turn number 4. And as they make the way for the hairpin-esque corner, you can see Williams trying to get that exit line. They're trying to be so close to the back of the Lamborghini driver, so that way he can have a shot down into turn number 6. Onto the straight they go. As they make their way down, it will be time on the race as an hour passes, and Williams now all over the back of Walton. Walton goes defensive here into turn number 6, but as they make their way on through, Williams trying to hang it around the outside. He can't quite do it. He waits for another opportunity. I think he's aware at this point he doesn't need to get it done immediately. He can afford to wait a little bit longer, and as they make their way through turn number 7, it is the case that Walton has opened up a good gap between the two of them. Another half a second gap being put in place, and I think that may be enough to keep Walton safe. But remember, we still do have perhaps the trickiest section of the circuit to come as they come through turn number 9 into the high-speed sweepers, and now both drivers have got to nail this perfectly. For Walton, he's got to carry enough momentum to keep him safe onto the hangar straight. For Williams, he's got to get this perfect and hope that his rival makes a blunder as they make their way through turn number 13, and as they come up into 14 now onto that straight, Williams is too far ahead. I don't think it's going to happen, but meanwhile, talking about things happening, whilst he may not have expected it, as Ed May makes his way down towards turn number 16, I think there will be a huge smile on his face at the fact that he's brought this one home on the strategy, and as he emerges from the final corner, Ed May will be your overall winner at Silverstone in the feature race and takes the win in the Pro class ahead of Alistair Kirk in the end, who drove a faultless race in of himself, albeit not to take the win, but a brilliant P2 from Alistair Kirk. And then what about Walton versus Williams? Well, as he makes his way for the final corner, Walton holds on to P3. He takes the final step of the podium just ahead of Gareth Williams. Nigel Stock comes home in P5, and then it will be Dan Morey who comes home in P6, Josh Wiggins in P7, and then coming home as the winner in the AM class in the feature race, it is Stefan Wessels, the South African driver, with a brilliant drive to recover from a disastrous sprint. And Matthew Proutin takes home P9. There will be Nathan J. Scott P10, Kosh Kelly P11 as he makes his way through the final sequence of corners here, coming through 17 and into 18 he flows. He'll come home P10 in the Pro class, completing the Pro class's top 10, P11 overall. Tom Delaney meanwhile will come home P2, and on the podium in the AM class race, a brilliant drive from the SPP MR driver, keeping it smart, keeping it sensible. Michael Steele in the NP13, there'll be Paul Williams P14, and Travis Linscombe Hatfield comes home P3 in the AM class when all is said and done. A brilliant pair of drives from the American, indeed a brilliant start to his season. Mark Baker in the end manages to bring it home in P4, not quite on the podium in the AM class, but a good drive from the back of the field. James Neve at P17 overall, Stefan Albanese P18 overall. Gareth Mills completing our top 5 in the AM class as he makes his way for the final sequence of corners and makes quite the sausage out of the curve there at turn number 16. As he comes through the final corner here, Gareth Mills will come home to take the top 5 position of P5 in the AM class in the feature. Lamont Wedder completes our top 20, and then we can see it's Elwyn Sykes and Davide Favo, the two drivers in the identical livery cars here. I believe they may be racing for a similar team, or if not, they both have a very good taste in liveries as they make their way through the final corners here. Elwyn Sykes P21, that's P6 in the M class, and Davide Favo completing all of our drives, finishing on the lead lap there, P7 in class in the M class, P22 overall. A brilliant race from start to finish, and as we see Ed May here flashing his lights in absolute joy. It's the case that May very, very pleased with that result. You can see Alistair Kirk alongside him as well. And I think all these guys have enjoyed the racing from start to finish as they make their way on down. And I cannot wait to hear from Ed May what he's got to say about that race. And whilst we only get to hear from our winners, I'm sure there's a story to be told from all of our drivers, particularly in the Pro class, as they all make their way into the pits. Well, don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back in approximately 3 to 4 minutes with your post-race interviews with your winners. You won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, what a brilliant race to wrap up tonight's proceedings at Silverstone, the feature race, and none more so the battle for the podium and that final spot on the podium in the Pro class in particular. Back and forth and fantastic battling through and through. And indeed, if that tells us anything, we have got plenty of great battles ahead, and we're not even halfway through the season yet. We've got plenty of time still to come. But with that in mind, it's now time for us to do our first post-race interview for the feature race, and that is with the winner in the Pro class. That is Ed May. Let's get him into the interview room. Hello, Ed. Can you hear me?
Hello, mate. I think I can. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Ed, and you sound absolutely jubilant. How does it feel to have taken the win in the feature race at Silverstone?
Oh, Paul, it's brilliant. There's something about Silverstone. I was coming in here maybe a little bit excited, but obviously after doing only 3 minutes of practice, all of which came in the last few moments of qualifying, I was a little bit tentative. And the first race set me up brilliantly for the second. I'm amazed. To be fair, huge credit to Alex. That was a brilliant drive from him. It was just, unfortunately, I think the strategy was a bit better for me than it was for him.
So with regards to the situation with Alex, and particularly with the strategy, just take us through what your strategy was going into this race, because we saw you take quite a different strategy and go very long throughout compared to a number of drivers who tried to undercut the pro field.
Yeah, and I think they came out in traffic, which was what really slowed them down. You go longer, you spend more time on low fuel, and it's just a faster strategy, really. Then that was what worked out. I was seeing when I was catching sort of the lead four and they were all coming into the pits, I realized the win is on, because they're going to get caught up in backmarker traffic. And even if they get out of the way, they're still going to be losing time as a result, and spending more time on a higher fuel load means they're not able to maximize the gains down the straights. And as well, I was actually seeing Alex basically in my rearview mirror for the entire race, for at least that first sort of 30 minutes, and realized that was probably where the race was going to be won or lost, was between me and Alex.
Indeed, and it worked out very well with yourself throughout, and the pace you were maintaining over the course of the race distance was absolutely astounding in terms of lap after lap, just putting in the laps and giving yourself that opportunity when you finally came into the pits to come back out at the head of the field. But I do have to ask, when you came out of the pits and you saw that the gap you did have to the charging pro field, what was going through your mind at that point? Because surely you must be thinking to yourself, right, the job's not done, I've now got to get my head down and just get on with this to the finish.
Yeah, I think I came out and it was about 6 seconds between me and I think it was Walton, who was in second place after I came out of the pits, and realized as long as he can hold up Alex for a little while, give me around about 10 seconds towards that last 15 minutes, I know I'd be safe. And to be fair, I think Alex realized that he wasn't able to close as quickly as he was hoping. I think we were both just managing the tires, managing the gap towards the end. But those first 30 minutes were some of the best racing I'd ever done. Some of the moves I was sending, some of the moves I was trying to defend from behind. It was great stuff, really great respectful racecraft. Whereas I think the first one was more about avoiding incidents. The second one was just about carving your way through, and it was an absolute joy to be behind. Something about Silverstone, something about GT3s I absolutely love.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant to hear. And now as we look away from Silverstone and we head to the Hungaroring for round number 5, what are your thoughts for the European circuit and what are you expecting to achieve?
Admittedly, I have no idea. I've not driven that car, son, or iRacing, and I've not driven it in a GT3 car at the very least. So it's going to be interesting. I've seen other cars race around there. I've commentated on a few events at the Hungaroring, but in terms of actually racing there, no idea. And I think probably a lot of the other drivers here on the grid are going to be in the same. So it's going to be a little bit of an unknown, a little bit interesting to see how everyone deals with it, but I reckon we'll be fine.
Well, we look forward to seeing you take to the Hungaroring circuit in a week's time. But until then, congratulations on your win, Ed, in the feature race. And, well, what a brilliant drive to take your opening win in this series.
Cheers. But before I have to go, though, huge shout out to Michael Seal and James Neve. They were in the Discord with me, both keeping me company, keeping me sane throughout that race. And was good to listen to how their races were going while I was, panicking a little bit up in front.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm sure if they're not listening right now, they'll listen back later, be grateful for the shout out. And, well, at the end of the day, it's a great community, all but, well, yourself and also the other drivers. It's great to hear you all get along so well.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Take care.
All the best. So hearing there from Ed May, very happy with the result. And when he was referring to Alex there, just to put you in context, he's referring to Alistair Kirk, I believe, and he was saying about the racing back and forth between himself and Alistair Kirk, which we saw, brilliant racing. And in the end, it was all on the strategy with Alistair Kirk being involved in that battle with Joshua Wiggins and also Paul Walton. And that meant that as May went longer and longer into his stint, the tables turned in his favour strategically, and essentially he was able to overcut the charging field behind him. But now we come from speaking to Ed May to Stefan Wessels, who finished our winner in the AM class. Let's bring him on in. Hello, Stefan, are you there?
Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Going good, Stefan, but more importantly, talking about yourself, how do you feel about taking the win in the feature race at Silverstone?
I'm very happy. Very happy to finish the feature race with only one pit stop. So, yes, I'm chuffed. I had a good night tonight.
Oh, indeed. And it looked as though you had to bounce back from a very difficult sprint race after a fantastic qualifying session, which saw you take pole by 1.5 seconds. But the sprint didn't work out. What was going through your mind going into the feature, given that the sprint had been a bit of a disaster?
Well, honestly, I haven't finished the feature race without the incident. So I really just tried to stay out of trouble. But it's such a difficult mix to distract because I'm running the pace of the pros. So it's not like they've got a delta to overtake me quickly. They kind of creep up on me. And at the same time, I'm creeping up on the guys in front of me. So we all bunched together at points. But, you know, we had good races. I enjoyed it quite a lot. I had one little incident in the feature race. I think, what's the gentleman in the blue Ferrari, he lost it. We were side by side through Maggots and Beckett, which is not really a place you want to be side by side. But with the pros on your back, you kind of have to get past. Otherwise, you just get overtaken by 4 cars and you just lose a bunch of time. So he lost it in the middle part of the corner and spun across me a little bit. But other than that, it was good, eh?
Oh, indeed. And you did have to make some rather daring moves. And I think you're referring to the blue Ferrari of, if it's not attacked, then it would have been Baker.
No, it was Liam Tack. That's correct.
But so with that, one of the big points, of course, was when you were trying to catch up to the back of Delaney. We saw when you were in P2, Delaney just up the road, but you had an army of 4 pros between yourself and Delaney. How were you trying to work that dynamic? Because we saw you were right on the back of the pros, but Delaney seemed to be keeping them between you and him.
So I really just try to get into a rhythm and just one but just trying to where I try to get past it just a little bit so I can just keep it.
I see. I must admit, we've got a little bit of static on your connection. I think your connection's cutting in and out, so we're not quite able to hear you clearly with regards to that. I don't know if there's anything you can do.
It's still like that. Any different?
That's a little bit better. That's a bit clearer. Because what I was going to come on to ask as well was when you went for the move on Delaney, we saw you look at it once going into what was turn number 15 after the hanger straight. Didn't quite work out, but the second time you seemed to have a much better run on Delaney.
Yeah, so the first time I was a bit too cautious. I could have probably carried a bit more speed through the apex, but I didn't want to create any incidents. I slowed down a little bit too much at the apex, and the second time I just let go. It's like I could see how he was racing. Like I don't know anyone in these lobbies. We haven't spent that much time together, and with Delaney and like Mills, and we've actually been now spending a little bit of time on track and really respectful racing. So yeah, all fair. That's good.
Well, that's brilliant to hear. Now, looking ahead to the Hungaroring in a week's time, going into continental Europe, how are you feeling for the Hungaroring?
It's actually a track I enjoy in GT3. I haven't played it in ACC, but I mean, I haven't played it in iRacing, but I've done a bunch of it in ACC. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Not easy to overtake it though.
Oh, very true. It's going to be very tight and twisty, but we look forward to seeing you take to the Hungarian circuit in a week's time. But until then, thank you for joining us in the interview room, and congratulations once again on a brilliant win in the feature.
Cool, thank you very much.
So hearing there from Stefan Vessels, very happy with his performance and working that performance to deliver the key result and really fighting back after a difficult sprint race. And he was saying there about the incidents along the way, and he didn't have the clean feature race, not the perfect feature race, but he was able to stay out of major trouble and bring it home. And in the end, whilst he was conservative with looking for the move versus Delaney into turn 15 the first time come the end of the hangar straight, the second time he saw the opportunity and went for it. And he had the time to play for it, so he made it count. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out at our official Next Gen Racing website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, you can check us out on Facebook at our official Facebook group, that's facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Also, a big thank you to our partners without whom Lobby 2 would not be possible, and that is Coach Dave Academy, that's coachdaveacademy.com, and Next Level Racing, that's found at nextlevelracing.com. And now next time for our Lobby 2 drivers, they will be heading to the Hungaroring for round number 5 on Wednesday the 15th of December 2021. We'll be bringing you all the racing action live from the tight and twisty circuit at the Hungaroring, because as you can see here from the lap on screen right now, and we'll be bringing you the full download and all the information you need to know about a lap around the Hungaroring circuit as we ride on board with what will be Koshi, Kelly, and next time around in a week's time. This circuit, as Stefan Vessels was indicating to us at the end of his interview, is a very tight and twisty circuit. Overtaking here comes at a premium. It's about how closely you can follow the driver in front and get ready to make the move when you've got a straight to do so, because after the opening couple of corners, and particularly at the very end of the lap, there's very few places to overtake, and it's all about being able to run close and use strategy to your advantage and put pressure on. Indeed, as we saw tonight at Silverstone, in particularly the feature race, being able to put that pressure on and run close was so critical, and we reckon that is going to be just as critical at the tight and twisty Hungarian circuit. But until then, it's goodbye from us at Next Gen Racing, and it's goodbye from me. I have been Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit. And do remember that tomorrow evening we will be bringing you the post-race broadcast of the Apex Racing Academy lobby, so they're round 4 at Silverstone. But until then, it's goodbye from us all. Thank you very much for watching. We do hope you've enjoyed. Let us know if you enjoyed by subscribing or dropping us comments and feedback. But until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.